Well, I'll go ahead and get started because interviewing Henrietta Antoinin with Harvey Newman and Teresa Taylor. I'm Andrea Young. And Henrietta, we're really excited to do this. Henrietta is a fabulous storyteller, so we want her to just get comfortable. And we are just, with some of the basic things we're just asking is, tell us how you came to be in Atlanta.
Well, I was born in Atlanta. I was born here. I don't usually tell this, but I was born in 1935.
Ooh.
Right, 15 Jefter Street. That's where old Pascal's Hotel lobby was. That was on the corner practically of Jefter and Ashby Place. And many times when I would go to Pascal's, I would tell people I was born right there where the lobby was. That was our house. Mm-hmm. So I'm a native Atlantan. I have lived away for just a very, very short time. But practically all of my time I've spent here in Atlanta.
And what was it like growing up in Atlanta?
It was wonderful. Most people would say it was hard, but it was wonderful because I really, well, let me say this, being in a segregated country, so to speak, we had fun because all the blacks were together. Now we're spread out, we don't get a chance to see each other. But if there was a party, everybody went to the party because blacks in Atlanta lived here and the whites lived out there. So we were always together. There were certain places that we would go to have parties and all. Everybody was there. It was hard when you think of the segregation and the racist things that we had to face. But as kids, you don't think about them. You know, it's a way of life, so it becomes a part of life, and you don't even look at it. But as you began to mature and grow up, and I was always an inquisitive child. I'd always ask questions. Why? My parents had 6 children. I was the 5th. But my mother said I was the demon of all of them because I was always into something. I was always going across the street talking to elderly people, telling them all of our business. But basically, we lived in a segregated society, which was a handicap, but at that time we didn't recognize it was a handicap. It was fun. I was just telling my nephew this morning about your coming, and I started thinking about some things. And I said, all of my books in high school and elementary school were old books. Books from Oakey High School and Brown High School and Gray High School, where the pages were torn out. Yet it was stamped Oakey, Brown. Many times we were asked to read a chapter in literature or take homework for math, and we'd get home and find out 2 pages are gone. And we'd have to go back, and the teacher would have to explain, or we didn't have copies then, but they would have to do it all over again because we didn't have the pages in the book. As a child, you just ignore that. As an adult, becomes extremely insulting.
But there was a time when you were in high school where you didn't ignore it.
I'm about to get to that. When I was in elementary school and in the 7th and 8th grade, you ignore that. But being an inquisitive child, and I've always read the paper, and I was just telling my nephew, I was just a political junkie, even as a little kid. Was always interested. I got into politics as a little kid, if no more than passing pamphlets out for the neighborhood. But when I was a kid, Herman Talmadge was governor of the state of Georgia. And I was just telling Carolyn Moore just last night, she said, things are a little different. Well, it's coming back. Now, I mean, I don't want to be political on you, but I'll just face it. The Republicans are saying things now that just a few years ago they would be ashamed to say. But it's coming to the forefront. Years ago, they were not ashamed to use the N-word. Nigger, 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 that's all you heard. And we didn't accept it, but we had no choice. We had no voice. And I heard Herman Talmadge and all of the politicians, and they were all white then. It was about race. It was pushing the niggers back. So as a 10th, 11th, 12th grader, I was very defiant and became very angry. But unfortunately, I was not in the midst of my friends and my colleagues feeling like I did. A lot of them said, oh, I don't pay that attention. Oh, Henrietta, you just so... But I was always getting angry about that. I was about to tell that little story, but you've heard it 1,000 times.
But no, we need it for the
okay.
record,
Well, when I was 16, I used to sing. I used to have a very nice voice.
Still does.
No, not like I used to think, But I used to sing, and I was a soloist when I was in high school at Booker T. Washington High School. At that time, that was one of the only high schools. It was the largest we had. When I finished high school, there was Archie, that was Turner and Carver. And Carver was another kind of school. But anyway, there was Washington High School, Carver, and David T. Howard. And in this large city. And therefore, we had the largest high school, Washington High was, and our glee club, we had 100-voice glee club. And we could sing. We could really sing. Spirituals, not gospel, but spirituals, anthems, that kind of music was just absolutely fabulous. And the superintendent was Miss Ira Jarrell. And she came and told our principal that they wanted Washington High School's glee club to sing at the governor's mansion on New Year's Eve. So everybody was all excited. We're going to governor's mansion. Governor's mansion was going to sing. I was not excited because I remember that he said blood would run down the streams of Georgia like water before we integrate. And his term for African Americans was nigger. And so I said, immediately when I heard it, I said, I don't want to go, I'm not going. And I told some of my little colleagues that I didn't want to go. And they were excited about going because they had never been invited to the governor's mansion before. Well, as it would be, my mother made me go. The glee club director, Mrs. Groves, found out that I was telling kids not to go, and we weren't going. My being a soloist, they wanted me there because I was going to lead O Holy Night. So she called my mother, of course, and my mother said, no, you've got to go, and she made me go. Well, when we got there, when we arrived, they had the school buses that brought us. When we arrived, it wasn't the governor's mansion that they have now. I don't really remember where it was, but I'm sure in that same vicinity. But it was a big, huge mansion, and it had a big, huge porch. And when we passed there, we saw all of the kids on the porch. And when we stopped to enter into the gate, that one of the state troopers or city policemen, whatever, stopped us and said, no, niggers, you all got to go down 3 blocks and park and walk back up here. Would you believe that? I'm sure they were insulted, but I didn't see the anger that you would see today, because we were so in tune and so used to this happening every day, all the time. It was a way of life. But still, I was angry. I was just angry. I said, this is why I didn't want to come. So we had to go 3 or 4 blocks and park. And then by the time we got off the bus, it was raining, sleeting. And so we gathered our umbrellas, 100 kids, walking under the umbrellas till we walked 3 or 4 blocks. And it seemed like a mile, 2 miles. We finally got to the governor's mansion, and we had to stand outside of the gate until the other kids finished singing. White kids, they were on the porch. Of course, when they finished singing, Herman Talmadge, Betty Talmadge, and their staff, I don't know who else was out there, but I would say 12 or 15 white people on the porch being entertained. When the kids finished, they invited them in for fruitcake, cocoa, and hot chocolates or whatever, and to a little reception. And we were all excited. So when it was time for us to sing, they told us to come on in. But hold it, you can't go on the porch. You stand out in the yard. So we had to stand in the yard in the rain and sing. And of course, black people can sing. We had 100-voice choir, and we took the roof off the sky. And I did the solo, "Oh Holy Night," and I never forget when we finished. Even in the rain, we still did a fabulous job holding umbrellas. When we finished, I remember Betty telling me, said, "Well, let me see the little soloist. Where is she?" And that was the defiant one, me. And they said, "Come out." I didn't want to come out. They said, "Come, step out." I was already out front, but I had to step out. And she said, "Let's give her a hand." They gave me a hand. Then they said, "Well, thank you very much." The kids thought they were going to be invited in for cocoa and cookies and fruitcake. But they said, "Thank you." And the whole bunch turned around, went in the governor's mansion, and we proceeded to pile up and go back to our car, to the bus. I went with tears in my eyes. I didn't cry, but, I was anger and filled with tears. And I never forget when I got home that day, that night, Mrs. Groves, who was the director, called my mother and she said, "I'm so sorry I put those kids through that." She said, "I feel so bad because little Henrietta didn't want to go. And we made her go." So the next morning, I don't think I discussed with my mother that night, but the next morning, which was Christmas, we were all sitting around in the living room. And my mother came to me and hugged me, and she had, not crying, but kind of full. I could see the teary eyes. She said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I let my baby go through that." She said, "But that's the way of life. But some things we don't have to do." And you didn't have to do that. As a kid, my mother would tell us, "No, don't go in the back of the restaurant to be served. Don't go around the back and stand in the back door to buy a hot dog." Because when we would go downtown, and kids, even high school kids, you want to stop and buy a hot dog, there was no place to go. Unless you went in the basement of Rich's, and Rich's had the hard bread. And any restaurant that served blacks, you had to go round the back door, knock on the door, and wait and be served standing in a door, and they give you your food. My mother said, "No, don't do that. Just don't go." There were special days that you could go to the state fair that only blacks could go 1 or 2 days. The fair was going on all the time for whites. And there were certain days you could go to the zoo. My mother said, "If that's the way they're going to treat us, just don't go. We'll entertain ourselves another way." So my mother was not, say, the kind of weak person who would just say whatever the white people laid out for us, do it. But that was a time I was hoping that maybe I would get a scholarship for singing and encouraged my singing. And she was proud of my doing the solo. So she didn't think about what we were going to have to endure. But all of my life, I've experienced that. And I want to tell you, I'm not going to tell you that all is well now. It is not. As we know that everything is camouflaged, and now that they're seeking a way to be racial, and we see it. But as a youngster, I became very defiant and very, very angry, and I understand, and I think most people should understand why we're angry. Why wouldn't you be angry? When I was talking to Carolyn Moore last night, she just shook her head. I have some other friends, they're white girls that I was meeting with the other day, and race always comes up. If you're around me, we're going to talk about it. So I started talking about it to them. And they said, "Well, I can see why you all would be angry. And even this little area where I live right here, Peyton Road, this was all white. The person that built this house was a contractor, developer. They built all the houses on Falcon Drive, this house and the two houses here. And I think it was 61 or 62, no, 62 or 63, because I had started working at Atlanta Life. They put up a Peyton Road blockade to prohibit blacks from coming in this area. When Clinton Warner, you know Clinton Warner, a well-known physician, black physician in Atlanta, wanted to purchase a house in this neighborhood. And he was the first black to show an interest in buying a house over here. He could not get a loan from any of the loan companies, any of the banks. Nobody would finance. Only $50,000. And that was money then. But he couldn't get a single loan from any of the major companies, banks, nowhere. So fortunately, Atlanta Life, which is the company I worked for, heard about it. And if I don't know if you knew Jesse Hill, who was another fireball, and I had the privilege of working directly with him, which is why I never left Atlanta Life and never accepted jobs, and was offered many other jobs but wouldn't leave because of the dedication and the commitment that I saw from Atlanta Life. As our slogan was, a quest for economic dignity for black Americans. That kept me there. How fortunate I was to work for a company that said their quote was, a quest for economic dignity for black Americans. Wasn't no way in the world I was going to leave that place. You know, and they bailed kids out of jail, even bailed me out of jail as a youngster. So I couldn't leave Atlanta Life. I couldn't think of it. But Atlanta Life financed the home for Clinton Warner when Clinton Warner was trying to purchase a house over here in Southwest Atlanta. And said this is a black insurance company. Didn't have any allegiances to white people. Nobody could say we're not going to give you any more policies. We had an all-black company anyway. So we didn't owe them in. I'm fixed to get mad. They said we don't want a damn thing. Excuse me a minute. It comes out of me. I can't help it. But anyway, with no commitment to them, we didn't have to. So Atlanta Life financed the house for Clint Warner. And that opened the doors out here. When you look at this beautiful area, all out Cascade, all where you live, all of that was opened up for blacks. And it was a miracle. Just imagine, it was just like apartheid in South Africa, that they had a blockade with the city policemen, state troopers, out where we pay tax, that we're paying their salary, but they're prohibiting us from coming to an area in the city of Atlanta because we've expressed an interest in buying a house. It's just the epitome of racism.
That was one of the big things Ivan Allen got wrong.
Yeah.
He supported the barrier initially.
He supported it. And I will never forget when Jesse Hill and others went and met with him, they were going to take it to court. It would have been the most embarrassing thing for Atlanta. And that was one thing, you know how mayors want to protect their city. He began to look at how embarrassing this would be, and they knew that they couldn't win if it went to federal court. So he stopped it right away. Not right away, but eventually they stopped, took the barricades down, and blacks began to move out here in this area. But in order to get over here at that time, you had to practically have a pass. You were either doing domestic work, you were the yard man, or you were the cook, or you were just a cleanup person. That's the only way you were able to come over here. Is that believable? In 62, 63, and these people were here 24 hours, around the clock, being paid overtime.
On the barrier.
Yeah, and we're paying it. So, to ask me about Atlanta, how we feel about the city, but I still love it.
But you were saying that just because you were when you were at Clark, were you in the student?
Well, you know what? Not long. I was there. It was just getting started, and I left Clark with my fast self and got married. But when I came to, and I began working for Atlanta Life, and during that time, I was arrested because I was marching around Riches for Atlanta Life, not for Atlanta Life, but with the Atlanta Life's team. And McCorris and I don't know why we marched around the post office.
Well, say something about, so Atlanta Life had a team of demonstrators?
Oh, wow. Okay, let me go back to Atlanta Life. That was another reason I was so excited about working for Atlanta Life, because I saw the commitment Atlanta Life paid for the picket signs. I never forget when they were marching with signs. Mr. Herndon saw how they had printed the signs, and it looked so tacky. Till he called in and said, "Wait a minute, they can do better than that. Get our printing department to come in and print those signs where we were having don't eat at Rich's, don't shop at Rich's, that kind of thing." So that was the first interest that Atlanta Life expressed. And then after that, Atlanta Life began to bail the kids out of jail. Plus the fact we had a switchboard, which was a national switchboard. We operated in 17 states and 60 some odd cities. So we had received telephone calls all over the state and all over the country for our business. So we opened our business up for the kids that's being bailed that were in jail to come. Our switchboard was the switchboard that they used to put in all the calls for bailing the kids out of jail. So our switchboard was popping all the time. So Atlanta Life played a major role. They had meetings all of the times at Atlanta Life, private meetings. At that time, the press was everywhere sneaking, trying to find out what you were doing and when we were going to have mass meetings. And they were, Wheat Street Church with Reverend Borders and Sam Williams at Friendship were two very active preachers. So they were constantly around these churches waiting to see if a mass was going in there so they could put it on the press. So that kind of turned them around the other direction. It was held at Atlanta Life in the little house out in the back. So they had major meetings. Dr. King, many of them met in that back room. Not back room, but in the little house. Just to tell you a couple of things, I do remember when Jesse Hill came to me and he said, we've been talking about the voting strength of African Americans. I think we were saying blacks, and that so many people have not registered to vote. And with that in mind, you wonder why, with the problems that we're facing, and yet blacks are not voting. Well, you begin to look at the reasons why they made it very difficult for black people to vote. They had to read a paragraph that only a college graduate could read. And we found out that there was a paragraph for blacks and there was a paragraph for whites. Very convenient, isn't it? Right? So it was very difficult for most of the black people to read, so they would not pass the test to vote. So, and they had to be registered by a white person. There were no registrars that were black that could register people. So Jesse Hill again, and I can't really give you all of the details on this, but I do remember Jesse Hill came back and said, "I've met with downtown." Who downtown he met with, I can't tell you. But he came back and said, "We are going to organize and get deputy registrars." Well, a black registrar had to be deputized. And that was, we had to go in and be fingerprinted and go to the courthouse. I don't know whether the white registrars had to go through all of that, but we did. And so he organized and said, how many people could he get to do that? Well, let me say this. There was so much ugliness and so much fear in the eyes and minds of black people, because you just never knew when, and you had no right. I mean, you just couldn't fight for nothing. You weren't going to win. So a lot of people, and I don't blame them, a lot of people just were afraid to participate, afraid to get involved. And I have to tell you, my parents even told me after I was married, Henrietta, stay out of it. Because they knew I was feisty, and I would get angry, and I was kind of high-strung, and that they might kill me, because I would fight back. And the theme was nonviolent. And I was not quite nonviolent. So she said, stay out of it. But I knew if I was going to be a part of it, I had to be. But Mr. Hill organized a group to be deputy registers and took us downtown to be deputized to register people to vote. And we worked at Washington High School, Howard High School, and Turner High School. Every morning we were there at 7 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. And at that time, I don't see that much of that. I'm sure it still exists. There were a lot of day workers, a lot of black women that worked in the homes of whites as maids. And I mean a lot of them, because they might have finished high school, but there weren't any jobs. There were no clerical work for them, and the only thing they could do was to work in the homes of whites, cleaning up, cooking, and men. There were no jobs, so they returned to be yard men and this kind of thing, even with the high school education. And so there were so many of them who didn't vote and had to be at work at 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning, and they didn't get off until 6. And by the time they wait and catch the bus, and I was telling my nephew this morning, the bus stops used to be 30 and 40 people standing waiting on the bus. And you didn't hear MARTA, it was just buses. And so by the time they catch the bus and get home, there was no wait for them to vote. So therefore, we stayed and registered people until 11 o'clock at night. From 7 in the morning till 11 at night. And I wish I had the facts that I could tell you how many people we registered, but I know it was in the thousands. It was in the thousands. And we did that for about 3 months. And it reminded me of South Africa, when you think about how blacks stood in line for miles and miles to register to vote for Mandela. Mm-hmm. It was that kind of thing. It just would bring tears in your eyes. How we would get there at 7 o'clock in the morning, and there were old lady said, I want to hurry up because I got to go catch my bus. So I've been here since 6 o'clock so I can get in here. Mm-hmm. And they were so excited that they were going to register to vote. And I think about it today, what we went through to register people, and they'll register them in the drugstores, on the corners, everywhere. It's no big thing. And I don't think they have to go through all that, going to the courthouse, swearing in, being deputized, all of that. But it was a really... We were very excited about it. I never forget, I got a certificate as one of the first black deputy registrars in Georgia. You know, I was proud of it.
You remember who else was in that group?
Ella Mae Brayboy. Ella Mae Brayboy was one of the coordinators. She was one of the major coordinators. And I was a little youngster then. I was kind of like her sub. I worked directly under her. But I kind of took charge in a sense, because I knew a lot of people didn't want to do it and wouldn't do it, and I went out and recruited people. And I wish I could tell you some of those people. I can't even remember. But I recruited a lot of people, and I couldn't get Atlanta Life. And I'll tell you about Atlanta Life. I was proud to be at Atlanta Life, and I was proud of the participation. But then we had some people who were like, we should not get involved in that. And I don't think it's ladylike to be a part of that.
Ladylike?
Yeah. And it was, my mother was kind of like that, like Spelmanite. And Henrietta, I don't want you in the street, and I don't want you out there yelling. And I was like, I'm hollering, hang on and let nobody turn me around. I was ready for it. That wasn't ladylike, as my mother said. And one of my mentors, Helen Collins, whom I love dearly, who was the chairman of the board of Atlanta Life eventually, I admired her so much, and she took me by the hand as a youngster in Atlanta Life and guided me. And I think that's one of the reasons I became a senior vice president of that company, starting as a clerk, because of her. But she was very sophisticated, and she didn't think it was ladylike, and she just didn't want me in that. And that's where we parted. But not just her. There were several of the leaders in the company. And they kind of criticized Jesse Hill. They really did. They criticized him that he needed to spend more time in the company and he spent 80% of his time in politics. But he was, I think, and I know, he was not trying to be a politician, because he never chose to run for office. They wanted him to run for mayor before Andy did. I think he was one of the first that they approached about running for mayor, even before Maynard. But that wasn't his interest. And I really think in his heart he was fighting for justice and equality for black people. And he knew that Atlanta Life was a base, was a foundation that we could stand on. Although we had some of our top leaders in the company who were not quite embracing him. But it's like everything else. At the end result, then they all were proud, and as if to say we had a part in it. But honestly, they did not. So it was difficult for me to get a lot of Atlanta Life people to even march. I remember when Mr. Hill said we need some people to march around the post office. I don't know whether they were discriminating in the post office or whatever, and he would contact me. So I was heavily being criticized. Henrietta joining Mr. Hill. And I would try to get people from the company. I'd get some, but then I reached out and got other friends that I knew in the city who would get involved in that. But that citywide voter registration drive, as they called it, became very successful. And I always think to this day that it played an important role in electing Maynard Jackson. And once we had our first black mayor, then it began to continue. But the role Atlanta Life played in that was just phenomenal throughout the movement, even when people were arrested all over the state and all over the country, where we had district offices. Atlanta Life district office would fix lemonade and serve chicken and fix lunches and open their homes where people could stay, because you couldn't stay in various hotels. And there were a district office in Atlanta, in any area where there was marching and civil rights participation. Then Mr. Hill would contact families and cashiers and district managers and salesmen and say, open up your space if you can, and let these people stay at your home. So they made a major contribution. And I could go on and on and on telling you why. And I was so excited to work for the company. It was more excited than when I was in college. Because every day it was something. Every day I was meeting dignitaries and people of, like that. So it was just wonderful. I don't want to talk y'all to death now.
No, we want you to talk us to death.
That's what we came here for.
Anything come to mind, Harvey?
Well, you've mentioned and really good discussion about the role of Atlanta Life in the movement, and some of this I've never heard before. So delighted to hear you talk.
He's written books on Atlanta.
Really?
So delighted to have this.
But you know what? It's amazing. And I have to say this, because I've been asked many times, I need to write a history on Atlanta Life. There's a new face of Atlanta Life. And I read The Quest for Economic Dignity by Alexis Henderson. There's one story to be told, and then there's another one. And I'm telling you the truth. When Jesse Hill became involved in Atlanta Life, right away he began to fight for justice in every phase. The company did not include that as a part of the history. Mm-hmm. You might see a little bit, but they really didn't. And I should say, there's a lot of us a little jealousy. I think he got a little bit too much credit out there in the public eye. And some things they didn't want told. Atlanta Life was very conservative, and they didn't want to be involved in that. So maybe that's why you did not hear it. Later in life, as I began to prepare to retire at Atlanta Life, it was really funny to me. I've always looked up to our senior officers and my superiors. Then all of a sudden, you're a senior officer. You're on your way out. You are the historian. And I never forget, when I'm about getting ready to retire, and some of the young people came to me and said, Mrs. Antoinin, we're putting together the Founders Day, and we want you to be the speaker because you're the historian in the company. I said, what? Like, me, I'm the historian, and all I could think about was Jesse Hill and Mr. Simon and Mrs. Collins and all those people. But I looked at, there's no one else here to tell the story. And I began to tell things that had never been told before. And
Do you
why?
have that speech anywhere? Anybody record it or write it down?
I probably have it.
Okay.
I've got a file of stuff. I probably have it. But I told about some of the same things I'm telling you all about how Atlanta Life got involved and with the citywide voter registration drive. With one of the our printing department, Mr. Reed, was teaching school, and he filed a suit about discrimination on the teachers. And he lost his job. I can't tell you the facts because I don't remember. That was when I first came to Atlanta Life. He lost his job because of some discriminatory factors in the teaching from the Board of Education. And he was fired. So Atlanta Life immediately hired him, and he worked in the printing department of the company. So we were there to, as a mother of the movement in a sense, to embrace the movement, and so many things that Atlanta Life was involved in that never came to the forefront. Never. Like, not only did Jesse Hill was there and found money from Mr. Herndon to help in Maynard Jackson's campaign from the very beginning, and how he organized throughout our company to get people involved in Maynard's campaign, which was a really tough one. I mean, that was the race because it was unheard of. Kind of like Obama becoming president. You know, unheard of, unbelievable. It's not going to happen. You're wasting your time. That was the kind of feeling that we had when he ran for mayor. Oh, he's not going to win. It was a joke because he ran for senator. Ran against Herman Talmadge. Well, youngsters like me and others who remember nigger from Herman Talmadge became excited. Win, lose, or draw, I'm going to get behind it and support Maynard Jackson. Because his slogan was, remember Lucky Strike mean fine tobacco? LSMFT? He said it would mean Lord save me from Talmadge. And that's what everybody was saying. And Maynard was saying LSMFT, Lord save me from Talmadge. That's what he would say when he came to a group of black people to speak. And not Lucky Strike mean fine tobacco. But the excitement was there, and meetings were held at Atlanta Life all the time. I mean, day in and day out.
How did you pick Maynard to support? There was some discussion that perhaps Senator Leroy Johnson and perhaps others might be the first African-American candidate for mayor.
Okay, let me say this. I had a lot of respect for Senator Leroy Johnson. He was one of my teachers in high school. He taught me democratic problems. And he was very articulate, very, very smart, very committed. And we were very, very proud of him when he ran for senator and won and spoke out against Lester Maddox. But first and foremost, Maynard Jackson ran first. Maynard Jackson announced he was going to run. So the focus was on Maynard Jackson running. There was always a question, and I don't believe it, but there was always a question, was who prompted Senator Johnson to run when it was apparent that Maynard Jackson was running? So it was no question in my mind who I was going to support and who the bulk of Atlanta was going to support, because the focus to begin with started with Maynard Jackson. And when Senator Leroy Johnson got in the race, Maynard had been out there, had announced, had gone to churches, had gone to speak to people, and you know how the church is part of the foundation for getting huge black groups to speak, together. So it was a fact that Maynard Jackson was the candidate. So there was no question about that. Leroy lost big time. It was, and I think he was embarrassed. But had he ran first, he could have won. I think it was just because of the respect but who was out there first. And Maynard had introduced himself when he ran for senator, knowing that he wasn't going to win. I think he did it so he could gain name recognition, which he did, which he gained. And when Senator Leroy Johnson began to run, people were angry. And they said that white people put him up to run so they could split the black vote. Because at that time we were really dependent on the block vote. The block vote, the black block vote. And we all had to come together united. When we didn't do that, we lost our strength, we lost our power. So there were so many people who became angry with Leroy, me for one, because we said he didn't have any business getting in the race. You know, we don't have much strength, but we become powerful when we become one. Not powerful, but stronger when we become one. And that's why I don't want to talk too much about that. But that's how. And anybody who ran against Maynard at that time, and then Maynard was so. See, I knew Maynard's family way before he thought about running for mayor. I grew up knowing Maynard's family. My mother and Maynard's mother were very good friends, were colleagues at Spelman. At one time, roommates for a short while. Maynard's father baptized me at Friendship Baptist Church. He was a pastor. So when they came here from Dallas, Texas, his mother called my mother right away, and my mother was all excited because they had already voted on his father, husband, to be pastor. And, they were happy to reunite. And Maynard's mother and all of her children came to our house. And they were little children. We were all little and just happy to see them. So I grew up knowing Maynard all my life. His sister is one of my best friends now, who calls me religiously every single day. In fact, I spoke at Maynard's oldest sister's funeral as her best friend. But just tell you a little funny thing off the record. When Maynard first came to our house, and he was this fat little bubble ball boy. I mean, look, bubble ball. His mother was sitting in the living room talking to my mother, and they had 5 or 6 children. My parents had 6 children. So we were all paired off, just having a great time around the house. And when the Jacksons got ready to leave, she was calling all the children, "You all come on, we're ready to go." Everybody was getting in the car, and she said, "Where's Maynard?" And she said, "Where?" So she started calling, "Where's Maynard?" And she said, "Miss Phillips, you see?" Mama said, "No, I don't." She said, "Well, Miss Phillips, wait a minute. What were you cooking when we came?" My mother said, "Salmon croquettes." Well, my parents had 6 children. And with my mother and father, there was 8 of us. So when my mother cooked salmon croquettes, she made 2 or 3 cans of salmon, and it was packed up in a big, huge platter. Maynard had the whole platter sitting under the table eating them, and had eaten all of them up. And she said, "I bet you, Miss Phillips, wherever your food is, that's where Maynard is." And sure enough, Maynard was sitting under the table with the whole platter just eating. So that was a joke about that. But anyway, we've been close friends, and I knew we were going to support Maynard all the time.
And that was probably another reason, too, because the church connection, his grandfather is...
Well, yes, but I think he came across so powerful. He had the guts to stand up against Herman Talmadge, knowing that he was not going to win. And we didn't understand politics that well then to know that he's getting name recognition, But here's a young black boy go stand up and say, talk about Herman Talmadge. And Herman Talmadge was like, whoo, frightening, would scare you to death. And the things that he boldly said about black people and the kind of support, this whole state, well, it's still Democrat. I mean, all the Democrats now turned Republican, but this whole state were Democrat. And they were with him 100%. So we had no voice, and here's a little black man that's going to come out and talk about him and just be defiant. So that he gained respect, and he was a smart young man. Not to mention he came from a very nice family, and old man Dobbs, his grandfather, he had a legacy that had a lot of respect. So that was beginning his foundation. And after that, he came back and said he was going to run. Well, he was a young man who ran against Talmadge. He was the one who stood up and spoke out. He was the one who said he'd be ready to debate Talmadge. I don't recall them debating each other, But he was ready, and he got on WRD, the black radio station. He went to the black churches, and he was defiant, and he spoke out against them. So he had a lot of guts and a lot of nerve. And from there, when he decided to run for mayor, I mean, yes, the black church began to show respect for him, but I think he built that foundation himself. So he was, I mean, and it was the most exciting. That was another very, very exciting time.
Yeah.
When he won, and it was unbelievable that he won, and it was just, and I thought I was going to lose my mind because I worked so hard in this campaign. Just walking the street, I was thinking about your father. I got corns on my toes right now because of Antioch. I never forget when, was it Reginald Ease who was running against?
Well,
Who was it?
for mayor, yeah.
Yeah.
Reggie.
And I think David Franklin called and said, no, he didn't call. We were at the campaign. It was the night of the election. And David said, the people on Boulevard, did I tell you this story? The people on Boulevard are not voting. And you know, that's a big area with all those apartments. You got to get those people out. And Coretta King was in the office, sitting there with us. And they said, Coretta, if you would just go out there, if we have a bullhorn, and you could just say, this is Coretta King in the neighborhood. She said, I'll go, Andy. And it wasn't in there, but she was telling me, I'll go. And I said, well, I'll go too. So Coretta, of course, had on high heel shoes. I had on sneakers. And when that wasn't working, but just sitting in a car. So she said, we're going to have to go door to door. We're going to have to say, this is Coretta King at your door. That was exciting to people. And they lived in those big apartments. And when she said that, they were looking out the door next door, the next door, and everybody came out, and she would say, please go out and vote. We got a chance to elect Annie Young. You cannot stay here. You got another hour. Please go out and vote. So that was getting the people out. Coretta complained that her feet was hurting. So I took off my sneakers and gave them to her. And I put on her high heel shoes. And we walked all up and down Boulevard, up and down the steps and back and forth. So when I got back, my feet was killing me. And they've been killing me ever since. Okay.
What about the campaign? How did you transfer your loyalties from Maynard Jackson to Andy Young when he decided to run? Was that a natural succession, or?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, personally, I had acquired a love and respect for Andy.
Okay.
For his participation in the movement, and knowing that Andy was in and out of Atlanta Life office talking to Jesse Hill all the time, and I'm working right with him. I was in many of the meetings, and I knew Gene, and that was just a natural. And I knew he was smart. I knew he was qualified, and I felt that he had earned the right to be the mayor. And we always, black people, we have to be careful. We have to be the best that we can be. And we have to put forth our very best. We can't gamble with, let's try this person. We've got to know that person, because that person is going to represent us across this city and across this country. So we cannot afford to be embarrassed. And believe it or not, from the looks of the media, you would not think that we easily get embarrassed, but we are. When you see a terrible crime, and the average black person, you can see them say, "Oh, I hope he's not black." Am I right? Oh, is he? Oh God, is he black? You're hoping not. Can you witness that too, babe? Even you as a youngster. So when we put a person out front, we want them to represent us second to none. So when we examine the candidates, there's no question in your mind that Reginald Ease was nowhere near what we wanted to represent us. I mean, that's just the way it was. Andy, look at Andy. And I'm not saying because you're here now. You know that. You know that. I mean, look how articulate he is. Look at how in-depth he is. I mean, you can call Andrew coming in right now and ask him anything. He might not know what the hell you're talking about, but when he finished, you're going to say he knew everything about all of it. And so, that, I mean, we felt that closeness and that dedication, and we felt that he was qualified to do it. And I know, if I remember clearly, Andy wasn't that excited about running for mayor. He was saying that wasn't something he wanted, but he was the chosen one. It was like, hey, you it, whether you want to be it or not. Am I right?
Yeah, tell a story about how Charlie Latimer got involved.
Oh, okay. As you all know, and you probably remember, all what happened when Maynard became the mayor. In the second term, how he became defiant and all of the things that Maynard did. Y'all know about that. I don't need to tell you that. And the whites were just angry. Chamber of Commerce was mad as hell. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah.
I'll tell you a story about that later.
Okay, they were mad as hell, and we know they were. Just like they mad with Obama now, but they were mad as hell. And so they said, okay, we're going to not vote for another black man. We're going to get our own candidate. So they quietly went and had their own candidate. Well, the black community, and I remember Jesse Hill, he had pulled in and got together and said, okay, you're the chosen one, you're going to run for mayor. And I think Andy went to do his due diligence. He went around to the Chamber of Commerce and talked to all of the key components where he could raise money to run. Unfortunately, just about all of them, if I'm not mistaken, told him that they had already chosen the person that they were going to support.
Sidney Marcus.
Yes, but they wouldn't tell him who it was.
Okay.
They told him, I'm sorry, you're a little late. We've already been approached and we already have our candidate. And he said, well, who is it? They wouldn't tell him. So finally he went to one person, I don't recall who it was, and that person told him, we've already chosen Sidney Marcus. And I understand Andy said, who is Sidney Marcus? He didn't even know who Sidney Marcus was. And then the man realized, oh, I forgot I wasn't supposed to tell it. So he clamped up and didn't tell him anything else. So unfortunately, Andy came back baffled that he thought that he had done a pretty good job. He's one person in the movement that they said loved white people. That he was fairer when it comes to being with white. He could communicate. He had a relationship with them more so than Reginald Eves or some of the other black people. So we certainly thought that whites would be more understanding and more receptive to Andy. But he was shocked. Andy was shocked to find out he can't get any of them to support him. So, and it was all built, it was about racism. That's what it was. That they didn't want another black because they didn't like what Maynard had done. So Jesse Hill called a meeting early one Saturday morning, and that's the way, this was all the time. Meetings that I would go to at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday mornings. And he had, and I can't tell you the people who were there, but I think it was Michael Lomax, Maynard Jackson, Marvin Arrington, and Lottie Watkins, and Ella Mae Brayboy, and Key, John Dale Johnson, people like that. They crowded the room with black leaders. And he said that we're talking about Andy Young, and we wanted Andy to run, and that Andy was running through a stone wall. He couldn't get the support of the Chamber of Commerce, and that's where the money is. And that was going to be the foundation of his campaign. And so he said, and he introduced Andy to speak. Well, Andy spoke and said that he had come to all of these top Chamber of Commerce, couldn't get any support, and he was baffled, and he couldn't raise any money. And you've got to be able to raise the money, and certainly in your own town. So after Andy finished speaking, Mr. Hill said, Charlie, come here. And I'm not sure whether Charlie was the only white man in the room. Might not have been. But he called Charlie, and that was a good 40 years ago or more. Anyway, when he called Charlie up to the front, He said, Charlie, I want you to meet Andrew Young. He said, and Charlie, you at the floor. And Charlie said, well, I'm a man of few words. I don't have that much to say. But he went in his, got me and go in his pocket and pulled out. He said, but I just want to know, would this help you? And he handed him a check for $100,000. And $100,000 is money today. But surely to God, it was money back then.
1989, I
Yes,
guess it
ma'am.
would have been.
It was sure enough money.
No,
And
earlier
I
than
never
that.
forget,
1980, 1981.
about
81.
81.
That's right.
And Andy
89
took
was
out
the
his
end of
handkerchief and wiped his face and said, wow, would this help? What you mean? So that was the beginning of the relationship with Charlie and Andy, to my understanding. And everybody in the room just applauded and went up and smoked. And I remember him telling, and there's more where this came from. And he's a Republican. And he said, and I've admired you, I've followed you, I've observed you, and I believe in you, and I'm proud to support you. And I put my money where my mouth is. So, and every time I see Charlie Loudermilk, I think about that. And when didn't he do the sculpture for Andy? And I never forget, I walked over to him that day and told him, and he remembered me. Henrietta, I said, and I told him, I remember when you first met Andy and when you first gave him that check. But that was a historic moment to me because I had never seen anybody give anybody $100,000. I've read about it, but I'd never been in a room where anybody gives somebody $100,000.
How do you think Jesse talked him in? Did you get any sense of how Mr. Hill got him to do that, or how he found him?
Well, Jesse Hill was a very unusual person. I think he was as I continue to say, he was a fighter for justice. But he had something that Andy had, too. He was able to communicate with whites, which was something that most of us did not have. How he became the first president of the Chamber of Commerce. It had to be because of relationships, and that he was able to communicate well, and to get them to understand the in-depth sacrifices that black people have made down through the years. I have seen people just be so respectful to Jesse Hill. I just couldn't believe it. Sometimes I would be angry with him, the way he spoke to people. I would say, how in the world they could take that? And here I am. At that time, I'm going to tell you the truth, I was racist. I was racist. I was born up in a racist society, and it turned me to be racist because of the abuse that I had endured. But I'm a fair person. I don't like to see anybody abuse people. And at one point, I thought Mr. Hill was being abusive with some of the things. If I could just share some of the things, I never forget. I just laugh at this one. But I tell you about Mr. Hill, and you know this, you've heard the stories anyway. It was a man who I wondered if he ever slept. He'd wake up. He used to call me at 1 o'clock at night, get a pencil, piece of paper. And I always had to have a pencil and a piece of paper by every telephone in my house, because he was going to say, get a pencil, piece of paper. He was telling me something to write down, something to do. He had a mind, a phonogenic mind. I've never seen anybody with a mind like his in my life. I remember one Saturday morning, he came to my house early one morning. I was cooking pancakes, and he said, can I use your phone? That's when I lived on South Gordon, and he lives on Lyndhurst. He would come through that way and stop by my house. Running out the car, jumped out the car running, door open. He ran in my house. Can I use your telephone? And I'm looking at the car running out there. I said, that's all right, I'm going to use your telephone. And I said, okay. So he went in the kitchen, he was on the phone. And I went out there and turned his car off because it looked crazy. It closed his door. And then he said, well, thank you. He was talking to Coretta on the phone. And he said, look up, oh, God, I can't think his name. What's the man's name that built Peachtree Plaza?
John Portman.
John Portman. Look up John Portman's number. I need to call him. Then he kept talking to Coretta. And so I looked it up, and I said, let me get a pencil. It's okay. It's okay. Just, what is the number? Now, can you imagine? I'm going to tell him the number while he's talking to Coretta. I said, well, let me get a pencil. Just give me the number. So he kept talking to Coretta. What's the number? I said, let me get a pencil. Just give me the number. So I gave him the number. I just said 344-8621. He said, and look up such and so. Gave me another person to look up. I said, this is stupid. I wanted to go get a pencil and a piece of paper so I could write. Just look it up. So he kept talking to Coretta. Then, and when he finished talking to Coretta, he said, who was the second person? To make a long story, he gave me about 5 numbers to look up. Names. Looking up. I'm looking up in the telephone book. And I would give them to him while he's talking on the phone. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. And I wanted to write the numbers down. No, just give me the numbers. I remember the sequence. I said, what? So I'm baffled, like, well, you can remember this. So I gave them to him like he asked me. And when after he finally hung up, he said, now who's the first person I told you? I said, I don't remember a single number. I don't remember nothing. Let me see. The first person you said was John Portman. Okay, and you said 344-8621. I looked at him, I said, this man's crazy. I couldn't remember any numbers. So then he called John Portman, and he talked to John Portman. So I kept cooking the kids, looking at it. I said, what? How the hell he do that? So when he hung up, then he said, who's the third person? I said, I don't know. Wait a minute, the third person. Who was the third? Then I tried to remember who the third person was. He remembered the numbers. Can you believe that? And he called everyone. He took the numbers by the person, third person. He remembered the numbers. He said, that blew my mind. And I kept saying, I don't believe this. I believe he's trying to blow my mind. He's trying to fool me. That man, and he wasn't even. And after he said, thank you, and he ran on out the door. I was baffled. I just looked at him and I said, he can't have a brain like that. Because I couldn't remember, I could barely remember the sequence of the people in line, not to mention all those numbers, but he remembered them. Then I said, he knew those people. He knew those numbers. So I just couldn't put it in my mind. He knew the numbers, and he was just jiving me. Another incident to make me begin to believe that he had that kind of mind. He called me one day, and he said, Ms. Antoinin, I want you to make a report on a retiree situation for Atlanta Life throughout the city, throughout the country, in the 17 states and in the 65 district offices we have. I want you to put together a package. He said, you don't have to do it right away. You can do it in about 3 months. But when I'm going to need it in 3 months. So I said, okay, that's plenty of time. So at that time, I was in love with this guy, all excited about the exciting weekend that was coming up. So I prepared for that weekend. And Mr. Hill called me that Friday. He's coming in Friday. Mr. Hill called me that Friday and said, Ms. Antoinin, I need that report Monday morning on my desk at 8 o'clock. I said, but you told me the other day I need it Monday morning at 8 o'clock. I'm going to meet with the board, but I need it Monday morning at 8 o'clock. But you told me it's 3 months. So my friend is coming in from out of town, and I'm not going to have time to see him. He's coming specifically to see me, and by that time, he's probably in the airport. So I'm furious. I used to get so angry, I'm ready to just blow up. And I don't have time to entertain my friend, and I've got to put this thing together. Hell, I don't even have time. If I had the whole weekend to do it, I need more time than I did. So I was angry, mad, and the whole bit. Make a long story short, I couldn't see my friend. Told him I'm just sorry. We went out to dinner, but a short dinner, and that was it. And I had to come home. I worked the whole weekend. I worked away, and I'm not the fastest typist, and it was hard. Finally, I got the report. I stayed up all night long. And that Monday morning at 8 o'clock, I was just exhausted, had no sleep whatsoever. Got there that morning, came in the office, and I told his secretary, here's the report. Of course, I had a copy for myself, from Mr. Hill. And I said, when could I see him? She said, Mr. Hill's in California. That's what she told. That's what you say. Mr. Hill's in California. I said, he's in California. When will he be back? He'll be back Wednesday. Wow. So, I was furious. I was very angry. I was so mad. I took my copy back and stormed out of his office and kept it. Well, Wednesday was a board meeting. So he came in, he flew in Wednesday. Where's the report? And she said, Miss Antoinin, he called me, bring the report up here. So, I mean, and he was the kind, there was no apology in place. No, Miss Antoinin, I'm sorry, I messed up your weekend. I wouldn't need me telling him that anyway. So I gave him the report. Let's go. He took it with him. Let's go. And went on down the hall. When we walked in the boardroom, I'm coming behind him. He took my report, and it was about 18, 20 pages typed. And he did speed read. He went, I looked at him. You don't know darn thing that's in my report. You don't know nothing about what's in that report. Because I didn't know it myself. I mean, I had to read it back and forth. So he got up. He presided over the board meeting. He went through my report verbatim without looking at it. I never seen a man like that in my life. And that's when I said, you got something here you ain't never seen before. This man, so I reflected back to the telephone and how he remembered those numbers. He remembered, he was speed reading. And he did a better report on my report. And I didn't plagiarize that report. I didn't go at a book and copy out stuff. I read, I had to put it together. So it wasn't like it's something that he read somewhere else and he remembered. I had to put this project together. And he went through it. That blew my mind. Let me know that this man was just... you asked me another question and I went to altogether something else to tell you that.
But no, that's not... I think that, he really...
Oh, but you asked me how did he get involved. Is that what you said?
I was Charlie and how he had gotten Charlie, to...
Okay. Well, I think because I think his white colleagues recognize the kind of mind this man had. I think they did. They gained a lot of respect for him. I saw that in many meetings that I attended. That he was just a unique person. Mr. Hill would come to a meeting, like if we supposed to meet here, I never forget when he was honored by the Empire Real Estate Board. And Jimmy Carter was the keynote speaker. And Jimmy Carter came and spoke at this Empire Real Estate Board dinner. It was honoring Jesse Hill. And Jimmy Carter said, I've never in my life met a man like Jesse Hill. He said he will organize a meeting at his house at 8 o'clock. He's the last to attend the meeting and the first to leave at his own house. So we'll be sitting there at 8 o'clock waiting on him at his house. He's gone to a meeting somewhere. He'll run in that meeting, take over the meeting, and finish the meeting, and then next thing you know, he's gone. And all of them are still sitting there saying, he's gone? The meeting is over? Well, let's go, y'all.
On to his next meeting.
Yeah, on to his next meeting. He was that kind of, and I will tell you, he was that kind of, and very impatient. Very, very impatient, but thorough. And you would think...
because his own mind works so fast.
Working so fast. And like if he sat in here the day when he was like this, he couldn't sit here like this for 2 minutes. He's sitting here and he's like this all the time. I remember we used to have meetings at chapel, not chapel, Vesper at Atlanta Life. And Mr. Hill would tell me, I'm presiding, but I want you to take over. And yes, because I got to go. So, and when he got ready to go, he looked at me. Like he didn't say, Mrs. Antoinin, take over. He just, and he was like this all the time. And he said whatever he got to say, and you might be saying, hold it. If somebody else get ready, say, hold it. And he said, well, talk. And like his mind was just running so fast, unbelievable. He was something. But he was, and I would say he really was a genius. Mm-hmm. There's no question about him being knowledgeable and ahead of his time, ahead of most people. And I think when he met with chamber members and others, they could see that the man was ahead of just about everybody in the room, and that they must listen. Things that he might say or predict, or that they have to go work out and see if that's the way it is. He's already said it. And they'd have to come back and say, well, how Jesse was. I've had them to tell me, Miss Antoinin, Jesse is something else. Oh, he came, and I've had white leaders to say to me, because I coordinated a lot of meetings, and many times, of course, he would be there. He would come in late, and I'm sitting there with them, and he would say, he is something else. And I said, well, I apologize for his tardiness. Oh, don't worry about it. We'll wait on Jesse. They wouldn't be impatient. Oh, we'll wait on him. Because, don't you worry. And they would tell me, I know he's such an asset to you. And I said, well, and they would tell me, he's an asset to our meeting. He just adds so much. He brings so much to the table. I've heard that more times than I can count. So he was, so I think recognizing his superior talent is what brought him in. And it wasn't an arrogant. Nothing was arrogant about it. It wasn't.
Humble.
Yeah, that's the thing. Humble. That where they could easily embrace him because of his humbleness and his ability to get things done.
But there was no particular thing, as far as you know, that he and Charlie worked on where they.
I don't know. I do not know.
Yeah.
I only know that Charlie and Jesse Hill became very, very close friends.
Right.
And I think more than likely, Jesse Hill, with his humble way of talking to Loud Milk about Andy and about the struggle for black people and all of that, how he just was able to get him to. I mean, because he would call the office many times. If he called Jesse Hill's office and he wasn't there, Charlie would call me and said, where is he around? I can't find him. They were just close. They had developed a very, very close relationship. But Jesse would let people get too close to him too long. Next thing you know, he was so impatient. Well, if we don't have something to do and we don't have a project, I ain't got time for you. I mean, that's just the way he was. Like, I don't have time for small talk. And so you just didn't small talk with him, and so after a while the relationship will kind of dwindle, but I think it was still there, but not if you think you're going to stand and hold his hand and talk to him, it just wouldn't happen. So, and I remember he and John Portman got to be very good friends, not to mention a lot of the other chamber people. He was, I could tell y'all something else that's funny. Do y'all have time to listen to this? This is fun. This is really unbelievable. And this is really about Jesse Hill. Jesse Hill was the chairman of the Capital Fund campaign for Morris Brown. And it's all about him being impatient. There were top leaders, and I think right now I look at Morris Brown, we could have been successful if this had really come together like it should have. But these people were like big men, like vice chair of General Motors, and I mean big wheels, big money. And I can't remember who titled the titles, but they were like presidents of major corporations. And Jesse Hill had got them all to come and meet with them to help save Morris Brown cause. And he called me and said, listen, I want you to coordinate this meeting. And he gave me the names of all these people. You call them and set up a meeting. We're going to meet at Long Life, whatever time. So I did that. And I followed through, and he taught me a lot. I mean, he really taught me. Because I used to say, I called these people, they weren't there. That's not the end of it. You don't tell them, I called them, they weren't there. You got to say, I called 20 times. I called 50 times until I got them. He's not accepting that. And I had to learn that, and that taught me how to handle my administrators who worked with me. But I coordinated this meeting, and all the people were in place to come to this meeting Monday morning at 8 o'clock. So, of course, I know that working with Jesse Hill, I got to make sure that it's on his calendar, and I did put it on his calendar in advance. I called him Friday night. Mr. Hill, just want to remind you, the meeting's Monday morning at 8 o'clock. He said, okay. Then I called him Sunday night to remind him the meeting is Monday morning, 8 o'clock. Okay, Miss Antoinin, I got it. So I didn't call him Monday morning because I've called him late Friday night. Well, that Monday morning when I got to work, I got there about a quarter to late. And as soon as I arrived, I made sure that we had breakfast ready in the dining room, in the executive dining room upstairs. And in a few minutes, the limousines began to pull up, and all of these dignitaries, these big wheelers, got out of the limousines, and my assistant escorted them upstairs, and I kind of waited in the lobby to kind of greet them. And so my assistant came back and she said, but Mr. Hill is not up there. I said, I'm sure he's coming in. That's okay. So they all came in. They all arrived. It was about 12 of them. They sat upstairs in the dining room, and they had breakfast. And then I finally went back, and I greeted all the gentlemen. And I said, I'm sure Mr. Hill will be in momentarily. I went back to his office, and I said, where's Mr. Hill? She said, he hasn't come yet. So then that's why she said, Mr. Hill's in New York. I said, what did you say? Mr. Hill's in New York. That's where she talked. I'm laughing, but that wasn't funny. These men were staying at the Ritz-Carlton. All of them had arranged, I had met with their secretaries. They came in, spent the night in Atlanta, stayed at the Ritz-Carlton, arrived about 10 or quarter till 8 in the morning. Hear me? And she said, Mr. Hill's in New York.
But he had taken a 6 a.m. flight or something?
See, I didn't talk to him Monday morning. I said I didn't talk to him that morning. I talked to him Sunday night. I said, what? He's in New York. I said, well, is he on his way back? No, he's going to an important meeting. He said, I said, well, what in the hell am I supposed to do? These 12 men are sitting around, and these are not peons. These are CEOs. These are chairmen. These are presidents. Oh, my God. So, and they're looking at me. So I walked in the boardroom, and have you ever been in a room where it's so quiet? At one point, they were laughing and talking, but now it's time to get down to business. It's about time for him to arrive if he's coming. So everybody's still and quiet. So when the door opens, everybody focus on the door. And it was me. And they watched me to see what I got to say. And I've got to say, gentlemen, I apologize. Mr. Hill was calling in an emergency, and he won't be able to attend this meeting. And I'm so sorry. They all said, oh, a family emergency. I said, they said, oh, we're so sorry. Oh, well, okay. Well, just tell Jesse we were here, and well, of course we'll set up another meeting. We'll set up another meeting. So they were very, very nice. And they left. Miss Antoinin, you have our cards, and you know how to contact. We'll set up another meeting. And he said, well, one man said, well, mine have to be at least 2 weeks from now. And he said, well, yeah, so okay, we set up another meeting. When they left, I was livid. Now, one thing about it, Mr. Hill was my boss, but I was the only one in that company who would stand up to him in 2 seconds. I was so damn mad, I was crazy. I forgot you recorded. You're going to cut some of this out, aren't you?
Well, if you insist. But
You're not going to have me up here talking about hours.
But yeah, well, what? I mean,
So
but
damn
that's the
mad.
flavor. That's the flavor.
Oh, Jesus.
That's what keeps it from being boring.
You have to remind me that you...
We won't put it in anything. That's
Okay, but anyway, I was furious, and they left, and like I said, he didn't have time to be dealing with. I'm sorry, I apologize. Well, I had something else to do, and that was it. So he just said, well, how'd you handle it? I said, well, he said for good. I'll set up another meeting. I set up another meeting. And I'm going to make this brief, y'all, because I don't want to take up all your time. That same thing happened again. The same thing happened again. Only thing, this time, I called that Friday to Saturday to Sunday, I called that Monday morning. I spoke to him. I'm coming. Fine. They all arrived in their limos. They stayed at the Ritz-Carlton. Some looked tall, now Buckhead. They came in. We gave them royal treatment. They're greeted, and I saw Mr. Hill's car when I pulled up. So I said, thank you, Jesus. He is here. That's him. I greeted the gentlemen, and they all had breakfast. I went back in there. I said, Mr. Hill? He said, yes. I said, the people are here. Okay. But he didn't, like I said, he doesn't like small talk. And while they're having breakfast and talk, he don't want to be in there. It's just not him. So he's on the phone doing something else. So when he comes in, he's ready for them to be ready for the meeting so he can go. So I said, have they finished eating? I said, no, they eating. Okay, he just kept talking. So then my sister came back and she said, Miss Antoinin, he's about ready. They finished eating. I said, yeah, they finished eating. So he came in and, you would have thought the President of the United States walked in the room. First of all, I would have been kind of mad with him. But they jumped up. Oh, Jesse, we're so happy to see you, Jesse. How is the family? How is everything, Jesse? And, oh, Jesse. And he was just... he sat down. And it's very glad to see everybody. And then he's, excuse me. Jumped up, put out of the room. I'm in the room now, sitting there. So we waited. That's why they became a little fidgety, because they waited here. 10 minutes of just sitting quiet can be a long time. Mm-hmm. Then 15 minutes, began to get frustrated. Looking at the clocks. These men had planes to catch. I'm getting embarrassed. So we just sitting there, everything quiet. So then he got up. I got up and said, excuse me, gentlemen. I walked out. What is Mr. Hill? She said, Mr. Hill's gone to catch a flight to California. Did you hear what I said?
He is a character. Okay, so they took
That light is hot. Y'all getting hot in there? I'm hot. Maybe it's me because I'm talking so.
You're working.
I had to go back in there, and at one point I said, I'm not going back. I'm not going in there. I'm not going. So his secretary, well, I don't go. I don't even know those people. I said, Lord, have mercy. So I went back in there, and I said, excuse me. And that was an emergency. He had to leave. But I didn't tell you all of it. It happened 3 times. That wasn't just second. It happened a 3rd time. And they were, that is one time I saw anger. I saw they all turned red as apple. And they were not that kind to me. They looked at each other and they said some things. And like, in other words, they didn't curse or use profanity. But I know they was probably saying, the hell with this. And they all left. But can you believe this? This is the real truth. After that, Mr. Hill said to me, contact them again. I said, Mr. Hill, I'm sorry. You want to get somebody else to do this. I'm not. Just fire me. I'm not going to be embarrassed. I mean, the stress, I'm not going to, you find somebody else to do it. So his secretary, my assistant, called him and put the meeting together. Do you know they all came back? That tells you something about them. They didn't send a replacement. They all came back. He met with them after the meeting got started. He sent for me, and I didn't even want to go because I was scared he might jump up and leave again. But I went, and they were grinning and happy as you never see anything like it. So I just couldn't believe how They were mesmerized by him and how he was able to get the best out of them in spite of some of the kind of ruthless treatment sometimes. And I think they perhaps seemed as if they understood, and they would say, make excuses. Well, you know, Justice is so busy, and Justice, he's just involved in so many things, and he just making such a difference. And Jesse, we're so proud of you. And Jesse, we're just happy to be here. I said, damn, I just couldn't believe it.
And all that was true. He was so busy.
I just couldn't believe. I couldn't believe that he would gain and continue to have the kind of support and the kind of respect. Let me tell you one more very short story. This is short. No, which one? I got two stories.
Okay.
I'm going to make them short. If you don't want to hear these, y'all stop me.
We want to hear.
I remember when Marty King was running for chairman of Fulton County Commissioner. Jesse Hill came to my office. I was busy working on our national art, black art program. He said, Miss Antoinin, this was one evening in winter, about 6 o'clock, first dark. He said, I want you to come to this meeting. He said, aren't you supporting Marty King? I said, sure. He said, I want you to come to this meeting. I said, well, I'm trying to get this brochure out. They're going to pick it up in the morning. Oh, you won't be long. I just want you a part of this meeting. So it was a meeting in Long Life all the time. And I said, no, that's my boss, so I got to go. So when I got to the dining room, they had the dining room all set up, a long table and pretty flowers and white linen, white tablecloths, white napkins. And there was Coretta King, there was Michael Lomax, there was Marvin Arrington, there was Maynard Jackson, there was all of them. And so 2 or 3 white people, I didn't know, but I came in. And when I walked in, I noticed they said, oh, Henrietta. I don't never get that kind of treatment. You know, I'm not Jesse Hill or Andy Hill. So nobody comes, oh, Henrietta. So when I came in there, oh, Henrietta, we're so glad to see you. And I was like, what? So I said, ah, that's fine. And Jesse, sit right here, sit right here. It was head of the table. And he said, no, sit right there. So he got up out here, sit right there. So I sat at the head of the table feeling stupid. He jumped up and he said, Henrietta's going to chair Marty's campaign. And I'm sure she'll take care of it. Gone. 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 And there I was, and all of them was looking. And I didn't know where to start from A to Z. And I'm a pretty good filibuster, so I went on and said what an honor it was. Didn't know nothing about it. How honored I was to serve as chair of the campaign, and you know, expressing that they had the faith and confidence in me. Yeah, you know the regular old speech.
Well, we won't ask you why you lost that one. Mitch Scandalac.
Well, that wasn't the one he lost.
So wasn't it?
He won.
That was one when he was running to be on the commission, not to be chair.
You know, yeah, be on the
To
commission.
be a commissioner.
Yeah, but he won that one.
Okay.
But the next one, I think he took for granted that he was going to win. And one reason why he lost, that election was on the back of the, it was the last part, you know, back of the voting thing, when you vote. And, you know, a lot of times you don't want to vote for a lot of stuff. You got to read a whole lot. Well, it was back like that. But a lot of people didn't vote because of that.
Because of the position on the ballot.
Yeah, and then he didn't have people out front reminding you to vote for me. He took for granted that he was going to win.
Well, that's why we used to do sample ballots.
Yeah.
So people could
see
they go in.
exactly.
They would know where
but there was no reminder.
down ballot is always a problem.
No reminder. And when you walked outside, you didn't see anybody out there for Marty King. And that's why. But that was a funny thing that he did for me.
The one you chaired, he won. That was his first. That was his first campaign.
First campaign. The second thing funny that Mr. Hill did, he called me one day. Jan Douglas was here. We were all very good friends, and we planned to go to lunch. And I had gone to the dentist to have a root canal, and when I got back from the dentist's office, while in the dentist's office, you read brochures or whatever was around you when you just sitting waiting. And when I got back to my office, Jesse Hill had Ricky in my office and said, Miss Antoinin, I want you to go to the Colony Square Hotel to represent me in a meeting. I said, oh, wow. I'm supposed to meet him for lunch. He said, no, I want you to go to this meeting. I want you to go to this meeting. And I got Ricky. Ricky's coming to pick you up, to take you out there so you don't have to park.
That's Ricky Cook.
Ricky Cook. You don't have time to park. Just go on. So I said, wow, okay. Didn't want to go, but it's your boss. So Ricky took me to Colony Square. We got out there. When I walked in the room, in the ballroom, it was packed with, I would say, 85% white people. And when I got to the door, I said to the lady, I'm from Atlanta Life. And she said, oh, Miss Antoinin? And I said, yeah. She said, oh, come right this way. And I said, oh, thank you. So I proceeded to follow her. And as I followed her, she took me to the podium on the dais. And I said, oh, no. I'm not supposed to. She said, come on. I said, no, I'm not supposed to be up there. She said, come on. So I said, well, I've been done. So I didn't see anybody in the audience that I knew but Maynard Jackson and Owen Funderburry. And they were fair, so in terms of black people. So I just happened to see them because Maynard said, hey, Henrietta, when I passed him, and I looked and said, hey, but all I could see was white people in the room. And I went to the podium. And I got not to the podium, to the dais, and she had a seat. Maybe third or fourth seat from the podium. I said, can you believe this man got me sitting up here as if I'm going to be a participant? Because I'm sitting 1, 2, 3, 4 seats from the podium. You don't sit that close unless you're doing a major role. So I was furious. I didn't even know what meeting I was attending, why. I just knew I was there to represent Jesse Hill from Atlanta Life. So as soon as I sat down, before I could sit down good, the lady next to me said, oh, thank you for coming. You're next. And I said, next? I'm saying, next for what? And she said, well, so happy to have Mrs. Henrietta Antoinin. At that time, I was not a vice president of Atlanta Life. But she said, vice president of Atlanta Life Insurance Company, and blah, 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 blah. And we're so happy to have her. And Miss Antoinin, would you... So I'm saying, what in the hell is this? What kind of meeting is this? Who are these people? What is it? I didn't know. So I got up feeling like an idiot, saying, Lord have mercy, what in the hell am I going to say? So I got up, and as I stood at the podium, I read backwards a banner that said National Female Entrepreneurs Conference. I'll tell you how good the Lord is right here, though. While I was at the dentist's office, that's why I told you at the beginning, I was having a root canal. And I sat at the dentist's office, and I read brochures, whatever. And I'm not one who'd like to read anything, but I just picked, at that point I would read anything. I picked up a brochure in the dentist's office about female entrepreneurs. And I read it that day in its entirety. And it was the statistical information on how many black female entrepreneurs there were in the state of Georgia, how many Hispanics, how many whites, and it was just all of that kind of information. And I have always been interested in progress of women. So I read it and comprehended it. And so when I stood up and I saw National Females Entrepreneurs Conference, I was able to say something that I had read. And I just filibustered, and I might have exaggerated on some of my figures. But I spoke, and they gave me a hand as if they thought I knew what I was talking about. But that scared me to death. And I got back to the office. Jesse Hill never said a word about it other than, oh, they called me and told me they were so happy to have you and they want you to join the group. Never. I said, and, so you don't take the time to say, why did you put me on that program? Why did you knew that? You don't say that. You just move on. So that was, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Just put yourself in that predicament. Maybe stop talking. I'm talking too much.
Well, you wanted. We could probably.
I
we
talked
could
up all your
take
time.
A break now. What is your time looking like?
Well, I'm at home. I don't have nothing to do with y'all. Yeah, put some orange juice or some water.
You're not at Jesse Hill? You don't leave the
No,
before
I'm
the
not.
meeting's over?
Not at
What
all.
I might do is save this one and then start, because we were having some issues about recording some of these. But, transcribing the really long ones. How are you doing?
Yeah,
You wanna-
so I can turn it off and
Y'all
then
have
turn
many
it back
people
on.
talk as long as I do.
No, it's not. It's a technical problem that we're trying to figure out how to solve. So I'm just going
Y'all have to stop me, because I'll get carried away and start talking about
No,
things
but that's
that,
what
enjoy it.
That's what
that
gives
is
it
not
all.
of interest to you.
No,
Gives it
that's
all
why we
flavor.
came.
Really?
Because none of the things that you've said are written down anywhere, and so we need to have this captured. And
Okay.
so that's why this is really important to us.
Okay, but I can talk forever.
Because what you were saying about Atlanta Life, and I'm saving this, and then I'm gonna start a new one. So maybe is there a little juice? Could we get a little water or juice or anything?
Sure. Okay, you want juice? I got some orange juice.
Or water. Water's fine.
That water? What you like, baby?
Doesn't matter.
I got some diet drinks, but you probably don't want diet drinks. You don't want one either?
Water's good.
Okay.
I'll help you with that. And
It's
then,
good.
And I'll
that's
turn
right.
this off again.
yeah,
We'll just say it. And we'll
okay.
Okay. As I indicated, I was very supportive of Maynard, and we had close ties from children and background and all that. But Maynard came to my office one day. At first, before I came a VP, my office was on the first floor on the right, and all of my friends would come to my office, come right in and go right to my office. And everybody knew where my office was.
And that was in the old building.
The new building.
That's in the new
New
building?
building.
Okay.
So Maynard came to my office, and he says, Henrietta, how you doing? Talking. I'm on my way to see Jesse. I want you to come up there. And I said, okay. So, Maynard was like, whatever Maynard tells you to do, you just did it. So I dropped everything, and I went upstairs with Maynard to Jesse's office. And when we got in there, he says, Jesse, I came to tell you that I'm going to support Michael Lomax for mayor. And Jesse Hill said, what? He said, you? He said, yes. I think, that was way before the campaign ever got started. He said, I think Michael Lomax is the next person. He's the person that we need to select for mayor. We need to support. So Mr. Hill said, well, I'm fond of Michael, but I hadn't thought about it. He said, well, I'm just telling you, that's the person we need to consider. Henrietta and I had a reputation of getting out there in campaigns and getting women, organizing women for candidates. I organized over 500 women for Maynard Jackson, and that was the most exciting campaign of all. Being the first black mayor, and we just got women from everywhere, and they were not all black women. Carol Moore was one of those women in that group. But anyway, it was black and white, but mostly black. And so that's why he wanted me to be a part of it. He said, and you got to support Michael Lomax. Well, Michael Lomax appeared to be aloof and didn't have good relationships with a lot of people, and we just didn't particularly like him. Although I supported him when he became chairman of the Fulton County Commission, but I wasn't sure I wanted him to be the mayor of Atlanta, and not back up. He was not one that I felt could make us proud. Naturally, he was intelligent, attractive, and had all of the amenities that would support him being a good mayor. But he was aloof. He didn't have a nice personality, and he wasn't likable. So I wasn't supporting him. But Maynard Jackson said support him. So, like a little idiot, Maynard said support him, so I didn't go to support him because Maynard said so. And so I left there saying, okay, I don't really like Michael Lomax, but I'll support Michael Lomax. And so Maynard came back downstairs with me, and don't forget, Michael's going to call you. And sure enough, Michael called me and set up an appointment. I met with Michael and promised and made a commitment to support him. He asked me would I organize women for him, and that was my first relationship with Michael, because Michael would pass by and would barely speak. So I said, sure, I would do it. I made a commitment to organize women for Michael, and I began to quietly, that was before he announced anything, quietly contact people, set my little a package together, and calling people for Michael Lomax, which was a little difficult. Okay, as you know, Andy was popular. People liked him. Maynard was popular. People liked him. Michael was not. Michael was elected because he was the most qualified person for county commissioner. But we felt there would be many people would run against him for mayor. And so I had a time building for Michael Lomax. But it was building. And I did get people, but not as easy as it was for Andy and Maynard. So all of a sudden, I had Benny Ivy, Amalia Marcus, Sue Ross. A lot of people came over to my house, man. In my family room, that was a place for girls' talk. And most of it was political girls' talk. And I invited all of them to come over to my house, maybe 20 ladies, so we would gossip, laugh, and talk about the politics of what's going on and who we're going to support. And I had that meeting so I could rally support for Michael Lomax. Well, that was the day. Oh boy, what's his name? The guy who was the director of Mummo House Glee Club. He just died.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't think of his name, but as well as I know him. But anyway, I've been to his funeral. Boy, it's gonna kill me. I can't think of his name as much as I know. But anyway, we went to his funeral. And after the funeral, I was rushing home for my meeting. I saw another girlfriend of ours who said, I had invited her to come to the meeting, and she said, I'll be there. Well, when we were all here in my dining room, in my family room, she came in late. And I said, where you been? She said, well, I had to go to a meeting with Maynard Jackson. And I said, with Maynard Jackson? And meanwhile, the word was out that Maynard was going to run for mayor. And I said, Maynard's not running. Maynard's supporting Michael Lomax. I know Maynard's not running for mayor. And, I said, I'm in the loop. People don't know what they're talking about. I know, because I've already met with Maynard. They don't know what they're talking about. And so I said, that's not true. And like I told you, I was close to his family. His sister told me, his older sister, said, they don't make enough money. Maynard can't get no money from the mayor. He ain't thinking about running for mayor. I said, I know he's not, because he told me he's supporting Michael Lomax. So this child came, and she said, I saw Michael Maynard at the funeral. After the funeral, and wherever Maynard is, there was an entourage just surrounding him. Maynard walked up like he was a big god, and everybody, oh, Maynard. And I said, Maynard, trying to get his attention. I said, I want to talk to you. So they're saying you're going to run for mayor. He said, I'll talk to you about that. I'll talk to you about that. Like shook his face and hand, like as if it wasn't true. I'll talk to you. So I said, okay. So I just knew it wasn't true, but I want to converse with him on it. So when I got home that day, we was fixing the food and having a good time. And this girl came in and said, I said, where you been? She said, I had to meet with Maynard Jackson. He's running for mayor. I said, child, he's not running for mayor. It's a joke. Maynard's not running. Maynard's already told me he's supporting Michael Lomax. That's what I want y'all to do. Come in here. She said, I ain't supporting Michael Lomax. Not if Maynard Jackson is running. Well, to make a long story short, Maynard had a meeting that day, pulling together his public relations group because he was going to run for mayor. He hadn't told me anything. Not that he was obligated to tell me, but he was obligated because he was the one that got me involved in Michael Lomax's race, which he knew I wasn't excited about working for Michael, didn't like Michael that much, but because the system had gotten together, and that's who we were going to support. So I was furious. I called Maynard, and it was not like Maynard to not return my calls. I wasn't the person that called Maynard every day, period. But when I did call, it was all about his campaign. He would always call me back. And so I called Maynard and left messages, and I expected Maynard to hear from him. He never would call me back. And it was all on the news that he was running. And I was just utterly embarrassed because, say, 85% of the women that I had contacted was telling me, oh no, I can't work in Michael's campaign if Maynard Jackson's running. And then I had people say, Henrietta, are you crazy? You gonna vote for Michael against Maynard? What's wrong with you? And then after that, and his very sister who told me he wasn't going to run, there wasn't enough money for him. I had a sign in my yard for Michael Lomax, and his sister passed by my house and was furious. Called me, came by here, but I wasn't here. Called me up and said, "What are you doing with that Michael Lomax sign in your yard?" Just raising his hand. I said, "Hey, you're the one who told me he wasn't running." But to make a long story short, you know, man, got mad with me. Can you believe it? Mad. I mean, mad. Tell you what power would do sometimes. He gotten so powerful that I wasn't important enough for him to call me back and tell me he decided to run, which would have been awful in the first place. I was going to back out because my commitment, if I commit to you, I'm committed. Whether I'm strong about it or not, I feel that that's just disrespect and it's unethical. So I would have, even if he had called me and told me, I said, well, all the work I've done for Michael and I made a commitment to him, I'm not backing out. But I thought he would have been respectful enough to call me back and let me know. He did not. He was mad. And my family, my sisters, my brothers, all of them looking at me with crazy eyes like, you crazy. Like, you gonna support you crazy. So my family had Maynard signs everywhere. My mother was living there and said, "Henrietta, what in the world? Why would you be?" Oh no, they were all loving Maynard. Maynard was a member of my church. Maynard would come to church and it was like God just came down from the sky and walked in because everybody would just run to Maynard and he would look at me and look off. You know, so I thought that was just absolutely awful. And then somebody said that I was leaving Michael's campaign, that I was going to support Maynard, which was not true. All of a sudden, I got this bouquet of roses from Maynard saying, "I love you and I know you would do the right thing." And I was saying, do the right thing? Is he telling me to get out of my city? So I didn't know where that was coming from. Of course, I did call him then, and he did call me back. And he said he knew I wouldn't stay in that campaign, and he heard I was getting out. And so we became mad again. And I said, you don't toss me around like that. You know, I followed you because I believed in you. Now you changed your mind. I'm sorry. You can take your flowers back because I'm still with Michael Lomax. And it was so embarrassing. Michael had to pull out of the race because he didn't get to first base. But for a long time, Maynard was mad with me. And I don't think he was the best friend of mine when he died. Because Maynard held grudges. He held grudges real deep.
Did you ever understand what made him change his mind? Why he switched? Why he decided
Well, I was
to run
told that, Maynard was very domineering, take over, want to have control, and he wanted to literally control Michael Lomax, totally control him. And Michael might look like a wimp, but Michael was pretty strong and would not allow him to control him. Michael told me that I don't want to get in it and I don't want a lot of publicity on this, but he really wanted to control me, and if I'm going to be the mayor, I'm going to be the mayor. Because I even heard that your daddy had to kind of let him know that he was going to run the city, that Maynard wasn't going to run it. That Maynard was trying to dictate to him because he supported him. But I think that's what that was about. And he, anyway, that was that. But he, for a long time, held that against me. And so I held mine against him. And even when his sister died, his mother died, his family asked me to sing at the funeral. This was funny. And Maynard, and he used to have me singing for him all the time. That was his favorite solo. For when he died, of course, I didn't sing for him because he was mad with him. His family was mad with him. So his wife was. But when I sung at his mother's funeral, he thanked everybody on the program but me. After he got up and said, "I want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you for your support." He thanked Bill Cameron. I think Bill Cameron's mayor for speaking. He thanked his Aunt June for her comments. And he thanked everybody, and was very noticeable because I sang 2 songs that he didn't thank me. And his sister came and apologized, and Mr. Hill told me he didn't like it. He didn't like it. He was going to say something to Maynard about it. I said, I don't care about Maynard not thanking me. He said, well, it's obvious because people were asking, why did he thank Henrietta? Why? But he didn't. So he was that way. He, power can sometimes take over your head, and I think he was one person, one of the mayors that I think gained so much power, and I think he was probably mesmerized over his own power, how people just relegated to him. So he, that was the way he acted. But then he started trying to be friendly with me at the very end. He got mad with Shirley Franklin about what he said about whites being controlled and that kind of stuff. So I don't want to get into that. I don't want that publicized.
Why do you think he didn't run for a second term? You remember he came back for that term.
Well, he was disgusted with Atlanta. First of all, when he was mayor, when after his term, after he was mayor for 8 years, he couldn't get a job in Atlanta. Remember, he had to go to Chicago. He had to go to Chicago to get a job.
Chapman and Cutler.
Yeah. So, and then after that, when he came back, he wanted to make some money, and that's why he wanted to support Michael Lomax, because he wanted to get bond contracts.
Yeah.
And see, he thought that, and that's what I think was one of the problems. He wanted to dictate to Michael about the contracts that he would get for his firm. And Michael had a lot of supporters, and the Chamber of Commerce was really backing him. And so he wasn't going to give up and give all the bond contracts to Maynard. So Maynard is a defiant person here. He was like, okay, you're not going to do it. Well, I'm going to show you you're not going to win. And he had that much power. Yeah. And he just turned around and said, okay, you're not going to support me. You're not going to give me the bond contract, but you won't win.
So he served as mayor for 4 years, and then
another 2. How many years? Another 4.
He chose not to run again after the third term.
After the third term.
And he was very late letting anybody know he wasn't running again. This is July. It was about this time of year when he finally announced he wasn't going to run, and that's when Bill put his name in.
Yeah. Well, he began to find ways to make money.
Okay. So he just didn't want to stay in.
He didn't want to. He began to make money.
I always thought, too, there was a little bit of, it wasn't nearly as easy to be mayor as it had been when he was the first time. He was mayor when there was a lot of federal money coming down to aid the city. And then when her dad got elected, Ronald Reagan was in the White House. And the money to cities didn't come anymore. I voted for him, but I never liked his total commitment to the business leadership of the city.
Who was that? Maynard? Andy?
Andy. And he and I talk about it. I mean, I'm not telling secrets.
Oh, yeah, I know, because he and I fuss. I mean, Andy and I have huge arguments. But I thought he should have done more for black people.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. He was not a friend of the neighborhoods. And anything the business community wanted, it didn't matter. We're going to do that. And he spent so much of his time seeking investment in the city, and I didn't understand that there wasn't any money other than that could come to Atlanta. And so he was really doing the only thing that was possible in the early 80s with Ronald Reagan as president of the United States. So then when Maynard came back in, he was used to having all that federal money available.
That could have been a major reason.
And then he'd had the heart attack.
Yeah. And then it wasn't as exciting.
Yeah.
The flair of the first black mayor excitement had dwindled.
That's true.
And then he had created a real problem with his white counterparts. They were not excited about him.
Well, the white business leadership never
Except
embraced him. They did Andy Young, but they
Mhm.
did not Maynard Jackson. And when he ran again, as you said it a while ago, the Chamber of Commerce, all the business leadership lined up with Michael. But nobody wanted to vote for Michael for all the reasons you talked about. He was aloof and
Just didn't talk to people.
didn't connect with
Didn't
people
connect.
and just was not a good candidate.
Let me tell you, I never forget, I was so frustrated in this campaign. When I worked with Maynard would come to our rallies and just his appearance. He was big, and when Maynard walk in the room, everybody would be excited and just speak, hello out there, and the people just go crazy. And we used to say, Maynard Jackson could say, y'all go to hell. Everybody would say, shoo! So Michael Lomax would say, I love you. And everybody would say, boo. It was that kind of thing. I never forget, we were trying to get Michael to say, fired up. We used to say, fired up, ready to go, fired up, trying to fire up the campaign. We did that with Maynard, and Maynard would get you fired up, shown up.
And you wanted to follow him.
You would follow him anyway.
You hear the word charisma to describe a person.
He had it more than
attracts.
anybody I know.
He had more in his little finger than Michael had.
Kind of like Dr. King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. King could walk in the room and it's just over. It's over. I mean, whatever he wanted, he got it.
And Andy had it too.
Oh, yeah. Andy didn't quite have it like Maynard.
But he could talk to you until he won you over.
Oh, yeah.
And even if you didn't agree with him, you'd think, I'll follow
something
that.
about Andy, you just loved Andy.
Yeah.
Andy was lovable, like the little teddy bear. He's lovable, and you would just like him. I would get mad with Andy and cuss him out. And he'd hug me just the same. He was the most forgiving person I've ever seen. If somebody said some of the things to me that I've said to Andy, I probably would never speak to him again. That's the truth. And that has made me love Andy. And I want to wait till she come back, and I want to tell her, I booed Andy at the Democratic Convention. Booed him. Booed him. And afterwards I wanted to cry. Because I loved Gene. Loved Andy, really. But he wasn't the forceful black man that I wanted him to be.
He was who he is.
Yeah. He wasn't gonna raise hell and get you all geared up, and Maynard Jackson didn't have to come raising it. He could just say some things and you just knew he was fabulous. But Andy wouldn't do that. Andy wanted to keep peace with black and white together, and he was able to keep that peace. But there was some few blacks up on him who was still mad. And if you were a defiant person and wanted to see some fights and see things going, Andy wasn't gonna do that. You agree with that?
I do. And he and I joke all the time about. I never agreed with the policy idea that he had for 6 or 8 years he was mayor. I mean, it was just always. Whatever he was for, I was almost always against.
So you weren't on one.
I'm glad to know that.
You weren't on one.
Because I felt like, like the NPU system in the city. We just gutted it.
And you know that was wrong.
Those were all my students that
That
were
was
fired.
wrong.
All of them, our graduates had these planning jobs with the city, and he waltzes in as mayor.
Well, you can imagine having a Maynard Jackson for mayor and then come back with Andy Young. Blacks were totally disappointed. And then we thought maybe the second term he's going to have a little more force, because usually the second term you say, well, okay, I didn't do it the first term because I got to be reelected. I'm going to get him this time. No, he was still just the same person. And we thought, many of us thought he was more friends to the white people than he were to us.
Well, there were those of us who thought he was more friendly with the white business folks.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's where the real white leadership came.
Yeah. But part of what this book project is about is to tell that story of how he tried to build the bridges that could make this city what it needed to be. And that was a tough job.
It was very tough. It was very tough because he had to but he had to go against a lot of blacks who had stronger opinions and differ with him in his decisions. And like you say, the white business people who were in agreement, and then so you had a lot of dissatisfied blacks. And I was one of them. We were angry. We were saying that, and it was more concerned with the white business people than he was with us, and that he wasn't. See, we used to have a fired up Maynard Jackson. We used to hear the man who's going. We just thought Maynard could just change the world, and we saw the changes that he made, the power that he did with the affirmative action and how he spoke out. And that's why he didn't have no job. That's why he had to leave here. And so for Andy to come after him, it was like to many blacks, it was a big disappointment. Let me tell you something. It's funny. You probably going to cut my head off. Hope she'll love me after this.
I love you.
I was one of them who had booed Andy at the Democratic convention. I was just telling them, booed him. I still love you now.
Over the,
booed him. And if I can remember why we booed him.
it was over the
Yeah.
runoff primary, the majority primary platform.
The majority platform.
Yeah.
And correct me, because you probably know more about this than I do, and than I can remember. That was at the Democratic convention when Jesse Jackson was running.
Yeah.
1983.
No,
84.
84.
In San Francisco.
Right.
We were all excited about going to the convention. I was a delegate, and we were so happy. Well, we were all the Atlantans would gather together in the lobby of the hotel right before it's time to catch the bus. They say limousine, but it was the bus that would take us to the convention hall. And boy, I can't remember. Boy, I'm getting senile. I can't remember people's names. What's this fool's name? Who got the poor people's campaign? What's his name? His daughter Feed the Hungry.
Jose Williams.
Jose Williams. Jose Williams, Tyrone Brooks, Marvin Ayrton, Julian Bond, John Lewis, Maynard, and everybody. And it was something about the Atlanta group. You don't realize that you're with the distinguished group because you're part of them and you're all friends. You don't think about it that way. But other people outside was looking at us as Atlanta people. And you had Coretta King and Marty King. You know, they were like, they just wanted to be with us. But the Atlanta people, we thought we were tough. So we were all sitting in the lobby together, and the hotel would come and give us complimentary drinks and all, because they were just glad to have us in the hotel. Not me, but glad to have them, the dignitaries. But anyway, we sat around laughing and talking, having such a great time. And I remember Julian Bond came up and said, they've contacted, somebody said, Julian, we hear that you're going to speak. He said, no, I'm not. He said, they want me to speak against the minority plank or something. It was something like that.
But what it was is it was saying that you could win the primary with a plurality. Because in the North, you had plurality primaries. If you got 30% in the primary, you won. In the South, you had the runoff. So you had to get 50 plus 1.
But see, you know more about that than I do.
And they wanted to make, and so the plank was that nationally, the Democratic primaries should all be plurality. You shouldn't have the majority.
But let me tell you what I remember. But in my mind, it was like against the minority plank and for the minority plank.
Right.
And it was a guy from Mississippi who was speaking for the minority plank. Big black guy, was a lawyer, and he spoke for the minority. But anyway, Julian Bond said, I'm not going to speak against the minority plank. And in my mind, I don't know what the minority plate stood for, but it was it was for the minorities. That's all I could visualize. It was for the minorities, for black people, what I could say.
Right.
And he said, I'm not speaking against that.
Right.
So he said, and they asked me to do that, and I'm not going to do it. So we all cheered him because he said he wasn't going to do it. And then,
That was because Mondale wanted that defeated. I mean, they didn't want that for
let's
some
see
reason.
my knowledge of understanding that.
Right,
I can't,
right.
I can't even be intelligent about
Mondale
that.
for our...
I'll be honest with you. I'm not intelligent about it. I have to tell you the real truth.
No, that's fine.
And so when Andy walked up, we were just about getting ready to get on the bus. And Andy said, well, I'm going to be speaking. They said, oh, you are? And he said, yeah. He said, all I know is they told me when the red light come on, go. You know, Andy made things funny. Stop. When the yellow light come on, get ready. And green mean go. And we all laughed about it. I didn't know what Andy was going to do. But in my mind, we were going to boo whoever was going to speak against the minority plate. And I'm telling you the real truth, Andrew. I can't tell you that I understood. Like I said, you understand more about it than I do. All I knew, the minority plank, I thought it was supporting minorities. Against it would be against the minority plank, whatever that platform
Well,
was.
because it was because it would give minorities more opportunity to win the primary.
Well, let me tell you what.
Right.
The way it was presented, I fought them. You never say a spokesman against the minority plank.
Right.
That's the way Andy's was presented.
Right.
Ambassador Andrew Young against the minority
Well,
plank.
he was siding with the status quo against the because it had come out of the minority caucuses to have this. That's how Harold Washington got elected mayor, because you could get. Now the thing that they messed up in the South is that then they translated it into the general election.
But let me tell you this. I'll say this. It had to be the presentation was not done well.
And also, Maxine Waters was on the minority plank side.
Okay. Well,
she really got the booing.
Well,
going.
whomever was for it did a better job than those against it. Because first of all, your presentation and your beginning statement, your introduction, should be that you garnish and gather people to support you. When they said, when this guy spoke for the minority plank, he was powerful and he spoke firm about it as if it was going to enhance all of us. And then he was so powerful. And then when they said Andy Young again, Andy couldn't say nothing.
Against the minority.
When he said against, it was like, Andy speaking against us? And we just started screaming and hollering. We didn't hear a word Andy said. Not a single word. Not in the hall. It booed. And I tell you, you could hear him on television. The TV, he heard his speech. But nobody in the convention hall. You could not hear people. When I finished, and I talk a lot, I get hoarse anyway. When I finished, I couldn't talk. I could not talk. Barbara King was sitting next to me, and we booed, boo, boo, boo. We screamed, we hollered, we booed, we booed. How dare Andy? We boo, boo, boo. Okay. This is something I said while you weren't in here, and I said it again. When it was over, I felt bad. I was like, I felt bad. And let me tell you what made me feel even worse. I had a love for your mother. And Jean and Andy were walking together. You had to go up a ramp. And I don't know whether you were with them.
I don't know.
Children.
I was there. I was at the
Looked like one or two of the children was walking with them. And we had booed them so hard. And they were walking up, and they had a sad look on their face, because it wasn't something to make them feel good. And all I could think was, I booed Andy, so I'm booing Jean. And I felt bad. And Andy was, and I said this too, Andy and I can argue and cuss each other out, and he'll hug you right before you leave. or just embrace you the same day. And the next day, you don't think nothing about it. I mean, he was the most forgiving person I've ever seen. And that, when people are like that, it can make you feel worse. And I felt so bad after I booed him. I was like, oh, I'm kind of ashamed, but I booed him. And when we were walking up the ramp, everybody was walking back to the limousine. And Andy said, Henrietta, something to me. And I said, I can't talk. So he looked, he said, well, you were booing me too. Negro, you were booing me too. And I said, how you know? He said, well, you can't talk. Hell, you can't talk. You can't talk because you was booing me. So, and I felt bad about it for a little while, but as I said,
you brought that up because I had forgotten that episode, and it was. I think though that I wasn't that upset about it because I thought he was wrong on the merits. He may have been right on the politics, but I thought he was wrong on the merits, and I thought the party was wrong on the merits.
But I can't tell you, honest to God, I can't tell you that I might have understood it then better than I do now, but I don't remember. All I remember what it was
his
against.
Theory was that the majority requirement in the primary allowed there to be competition among black candidates, and then you come out, with a unified candidate that the black community supports by having a runoff. But the thing is runoffs almost never change who the front runner was. So it just uses up money and energy and time and getting people out to vote for all these elections. It just goes down, down, down. So
Mayor Norwood will disagree.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, we got a lot to talk about him. I keep y'all here all night long.
Well, that's there you go.
That's another reason. But I want to end up this.
But that was a nonpartisan general election.
But what was so surprising was that more people turned out for the runoff than for a general election. Yeah. And I don't know that.
You mean for Mayor Norwood?
Yeah, I don't know that
I voted against Mary Norwood.
that has never happened.
Yeah.
Well, there were problems in that race. I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, racism would bring out an election. I mean, and when you really think about it, Mary Norwood, there's no question about it, was a redneck. She can say she was
she
liberal.
had nowhere near the qualifications of Kasim.
A stone redneck that had done her homework. She knew early on that she wanted to run. She called me several times. She invited me to different parties and different things. And if you had any concerns in your district, please let me know because I'm going to do whatever kind of help y'all. And she went all over the community. She was a citywide council person. So, and she went to all the NPU meetings. She got close to people. She helped some people.
Calls.
Huh? Yeah.
She bought people hot dogs. All the local citizens.
She paid people's gas bills. She bought gas for their cars. She did, and she had a little funds to do a lot of things to help people. Yeah. But I want to say one more thing about Andy about that.
Yeah.
In many instances, blacks, got mad with Andy about his politics. But he was a type of personality you couldn't stay mad with him. You couldn't stay mad with him. You would fuss and get mad with him, but like Andy went to something for George Bush. He went to a dinner, something for George Bush. And Rita and I saw him at the Capitol. And they were having a Martin Luther King celebration at the Capitol, and I was one of the commissioners for Dr. King at that time, and I think Andy was the speaker, whatever. And we had just heard on the news that Andy went to George Bush's dinner. And we got mad. What the hell is Andy doing? And we just blew up on Andy. And you know what makes you love him? He takes it just like he's got on a bulletproof vest that it bounces right off of him. And he said, oh, Henrietta, you ain't really nothing but venture letters. Y'all just get mad all you want to. George Bush did more for me than any other president I ever asked for. Everything I asked
More
him
for
for.
Africa.
For Africa, yeah. And then anything I asked him for, he did. So I ain't thinking about what y'all got to say. He just ignored us, and we blessed him out. Do you know, we saw in the paper the next day that some reporter, and I saw this reporter while we was chewing Andy out. This white man was standing there, and I looked and I said, "What are you standing there for? Nobody talking to you." And we shooed him away, but he got some of the information, and he found out who we were. That was Henrietta Antoinin and Now Life, and Rita Samuels with the George Coalition of Black Women chewed Andy Young out and went on and talked about it because he attended the party. And he looked at it in the paper. I guess he saw it. He laughed about it and moved on. So you could chew him out today, and today he's going to be hugging you and laughing, talking, and forget about it and talking about something else. He never let that anger get stored in him like Maynard Jackson. Had that been Andy, and I was so going to support his opposition, he would have never responded like Maynard Jackson did. And I'm not telling you this because that's your dad, because you know I call a spade a spade. But he was that kind of loving person that you have to say, well, he'd make you feel like, oh, like when I booed him, I felt so bad after I saw him. And I think I got worse because Gene had a look like they were all heard about it. I went like, oh, Lord, I didn't even think about it. Oh, you just felt bad. But they both embraced all of us. And then we eventually, I remember we was over to your house, your mother's house at a meeting, Marion Jones and some more of us, Alice Johnson, talking about putting the women group together. And Gene brought up, and how do you remember when Henrietta booed Andy? And we all laughed about it. But you couldn't have done that with Maynard Jackson. He probably wouldn't be speaking to me. He was dead in his grave. Now we still friends after I booed your dad.
We're still friends. Like I said, I thought he was wrong to do it. That was my feeling.
Oh, I'm supposed to be fixing you all something cool to drink. You getting out of your sweater now. You see it's hot in here.
Oh, Lord. Have anything, Teresa, that you want to
Yeah,
add?
I had to, but I didn't
Good.
want to jump in. But one is going to kind of rewind you a little bit. I know when you were talking a lot about your involvement in the movement and with Atlanta Life and everything, I just wanted to know about like the sacrifices you had to make. I know you said at times you were unpopular or seen as not ladylike, or maybe your mom wasn't agreeing with certain things, but were there huge sacrifices that you had to make?
Not really.
Not really?
I didn't even think about them as sacrifices. I enjoyed what I was doing so much. It was a thrill to me. It was exciting. I remember when I did tell my mother that we were going to picket around the post office. And my mother was saying that, you know, when you're grown now, you do what you want to, but I really wish you wouldn't. It was exciting to me. Like I tell you, I used to love to sing, and you know how I am, Andrew, when we go to, when you weren't there, you or something. But when I've always enjoyed it was kind of like campaigning to me. That's why it was a thrill to get involved, and I didn't really feel like I was sacrificing anything. I felt like it was a need. It was something I had to do, and how could you participate in something that would make a difference and feel so good about it? And it was like sometimes I used to say, because I loved working in Atlanta Life, can you believe they pay me for doing this? I mean, I really, really enjoyed it. I was going to run for political office once. Jan Douglas and Benny Ivey got me in this. I went to a campaign meeting for Andy Young, and I can't remember whether it was when he was running for governor or mayor. I can't remember, but I can't believe it was when he was running for governor. And I attended this meeting, and once I got there, they said, well, Henrietta, you need lights blinking. So you need to help organize, and you need to organize some women. And I got up to speak about organizing about the women. And I said, you know, it's rewarding to see a group that's so diverse as this one. There were black women, or white women, Hispanic women, all in this room for Andy, and the room was just packed. And I had not experienced that much other than in Andy's campaign. Because in Maynard's campaign, it was all black women. You didn't have hardly any white women in there. And in Andy's campaign, it was a diverse group. And I said, how wonderful this is, that here's a black man running, and we have a diverse group like this. And I said, I want to say to you ladies, we don't have enough females politicians. We don't have enough females in office, and we can make a difference. So the next time there is an opening in your district, let's consider a qualified woman, not necessarily black, but let's consider a qualified woman that can run. And if there's an opening in your district, and so as you look around this room, we could do the same thing we're doing here for a woman. And I'm not knocking Andy now, y'all, but we can do this for a woman too. So I got ready to get back into Andy's campaign when Benny Ivy from the back of the room said, Henrietta, there's an opening in your district right now. Henrietta Canty, remember her? Mm-hmm. Henrietta Canty is running for state representative in your district. And she was a person that was not desirable to a lot of people. And they said, so I said, oh, Benny. So everybody said, what? I had just made the statement. If there's an opening in your district, find a qualified woman. So they said, Henrietta, and Benny hollered that out. And then the whole room's hollered, run, Henrietta, run, run, run. And I was like, Lord, look what I got myself into. So to make a long story short, they turned that group into not only Andy's campaign, but they were going to support me. And I wasn't anymore ready to run for a state representative as I am to run for president of the United States. I was furious. And I said I just put my mouth in it. I had no business saying that. And I couldn't get out of it. And I stayed at Andy's campaign office a long time that night. I don't know, we were just, you sit around and talk, and then they start talking, we're going to get together, we're going to come up to your house, and we're going to get your brochures. I was like, and Benny can talk a mile a minute. Mm-hmm. And she was organizing, saying, we're coming over your house and with Sue, and we're going to put up a brochure. I was like, damn, I didn't want to do it. And when I left that meeting, there was some talk show on television, on WOK, and they said, I hear Henrietta Antoinin is going to run for state representative against Henrietta Canty. And I was just furious because I wasn't prepared. I didn't have issues. I just wasn't. Didn't want to. And I couldn't talk them out of it. And Benny and Sue and Jan Douglas, several of them came over to my house and sat down and started working on a brochure. And it was the worst thing. I don't care what I said, they ignored me. And, well, what are your issues? Well, hell, I didn't have no issues. But they're going to make me have issues. And anyway, to make a long story short, I backed out of it at the very last minute. I even qualified. They called me up the last day of qualifying and said, we got to be at the Democratic office by 5 o'clock. It was like 4:30. I said, I knew it, but I wasn't going to say nothing. I was going to let the time expire. And Jan Meadows, and I think Benny, or one of them, 2 or 3 of them, rushed by my office in a car, come on and pulled me out of my office and said, let's go, and rushed. We got to the Democratic office about a minute after 5, and the man said, he knew us, that's okay, it's 5 o'clock, y'all made it on time. And I qualified. And then Sue, what's her name? Henrietta Canty blasted me. I couldn't stand it. Here I am supposed to be so tough, but I couldn't stand to be criticized. It's something that to have people criticize you, and I go again with Andy, how he could take criticism and smile and embrace you just the same. I'm not that strong. I couldn't take it. Henrietta Canty was talking about me like I was a rat with tails on it, saying all kind of ugly things that were not true. And I was furious. I am going to cry. And I really did. I wanted to cry, and I wanted to get mad, and I wanted to go knock on her door and screaming and raising. And they said, hey, you got to be thick-skinned. You can't do that. You can't. Well, she's lying to me. Well, you can't come across that way. You got to be, express yourself better than that. You got, ooh. And I knew then. I said, I don't have a business being a politician. And then they said that it wasn't my machinery. It was the Jess Hill machinery behind me. Jess Hill was pushing this. It wasn't me. Jess Hill didn't have nothing to do with it. Hardy knew I was running. You know, I think I did tell him so he would know, and he was very supportive, but he didn't have nothing to do with it. So they had to get mad at me all they wanted to. I pulled out of that race. So that's the end of that. But even I had built up, got stationary and the whole bit. But that's just to tell you all this big talk about things that I've done. I'm scary when it comes to getting on TV and being in a debate and taking it when people criticize you and calling me names and saying things that are not true. I couldn't take it. Could not take it. And believe me, cried. Okay.
You had another question?
She kind of went over it. I was just going to talk about women in leadership, and you kind of touched on it.
I want to go in a direction related to that and about your leadership as a woman in business. You were out there. How did that feel to be a vice president at Atlanta Life? Now, you said you had some mentors who went before you, but you were still, did you feel lonely and among businessmen who dominated the city?
Yeah, you always do. Well, first of all, when I became a VP of Atlanta Life, there were very few women VPs of corporate Atlanta. And many times I attended meetings and you're always the minority. And most of the times, they don't, even in my company, they don't want to hear what you have to say. You're ignored. And I had to become kind of defiant and didn't want to come across that way. But sometimes you just have to hit on the table and make them give you some attention. And then I realized that you've got to do your homework. You've got to be really prepared. You cannot just make mild contributions. You've got to really bring something to the table. And many times I would go to the senior staff meetings or board meetings, and I would listen. And I used to say, well, I want to learn, so I'd listen. And I'd come away with feeling that didn't agree with a lot of things that transpired, but I wasn't bold enough to speak out and say so. And finally, I realized that that wasn't getting me anywhere, and that really wasn't me to accept things that I disagreed with. So I started really doing my homework. And when I began to really speak up and they realized that I was very knowledgeable of the subject matter, that I gained so much more respect. And the next thing I knew, I had the respect of all of them. And I think that's in any area, in any field, that you've got to know what you're talking about. You got to be knowledgeable, or you will be totally ignored. And you can't be too quiet because they would act like you're not in the room. But once I realized that I was being pushed back and that I was being ignored, I would just study very hard and read everything I possibly could and analyze everything I could. So when I came, I was always prepared. And once I did that, then that whole shadow of my being a woman just moved to the other side of the room. But I know as a VP of Atlanta Life, I was the only woman for years on our board and on our senior management team. And I had my mentor, Mrs. Helen Collins, who was the lady who told me it wasn't ladylike for me to be involved in all of this. She was the second female vice president of Atlanta Life, and I was the third. And she used to tell me, Henrietta, it's rough and you got to deal with these men. And she said, you've got to be prepared. You've got to be prepared. And you've got to really speak out, because they will out-talk you, they will ignore you, and they would act like you're not even in the room. So she kind of warned me of that. And she did tell me, listen, make sure you listen, make sure you understand. Because if you start talking and they realize you don't even know what you're talking about, or we've already gone over that, and you're repeating something that's already been said, you make yourself look bad. Listen and learn as much as you can. And I admired her an awful lot. She was one of my dearest, dearest friends. 84 years old when she died. And we were very, 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 very close. But that is a fact. Women are easily ignored. Yeah, and in most instances, you're going to be in the minority. But I think things are getting a little better. They're getting better because of the women and people who've gone before us have made a dent and made strong statements, made commitments and differences. So it kind of made room for the respect for us. Am I answering your question? Mm-hmm.
So what do you think is the most important thing Maynard Jackson did for Atlanta?
Gave us pride. He really made blacks feel good about themselves. It was kind of like lacing up your bootstrap. That he just made you feel good. You ever felt like you could stick your chest out? And we felt like we had somebody that really supported us. You know, he was like the daddy of the team. He was, he was just tough. And the mere fact, being discriminated against all of our lives, and then having a young black man who, this is Precious, he's my little baby. Don't get on his paper now, Precious.
That's your paper.
Oh, that's right. Sit, be still now. If you're obeying it, you got to be still. But I think that's what it was. Mm-hmm. Maynard came across as, he had dignity, yet he was like demanded respect. Mm-hmm. And black people all over the country wanted to move to Atlanta. I have a little young lady who became my assistant, who has her own business now and doing very, very well. Came from Jamaica. She said she read about Maynard in Ebony and the different magazines and would see him occasionally on TV. And she just said, that's the place I want to be, where black people can walk around with dignity and respect. And that's, remember when Maynard made this statement, when I think Andy was getting ready to run, and it was something about shuffling and grinning Negroes. What was that about? I can't remember, but I think he endorsed Andy.
I think it was the people supporting Sidney Marcus.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. That's right. That's exactly what it was. Because he had endorsed Andy. Right. And he made the comment that there were some blacks that were shuffling and grinning Negroes, like scratching their heads. And I think that's what it was. Mm-hmm. He brought a lot of self-respect, dignity, and pride.
Do you remember Ivan Allen?
Yes.
What did you think of Ivan Allen?
Well, I didn't like him at first, because he was a part of the system. And I don't know, but I always felt that there were a team of people, and I think Jesse Hill was among that team, who were able to turn him around. Because he was a part of that Peyton Road blockade. That was during his administration. And I think when he was approached, and I'm just guessing at this now, I felt that once he was told that, hey, we're going to file a suit, if it had to be a federal suit, that this is absolutely wrong, and that you would be embarrassed. And so he, he was not a Lester Maddox. He didn't fight and act ugly. He immediately turned coat and became a friend of Atlanta. He was a part of that city too busy to hate, wasn't he?
And testified for the Civil Rights Act. Ivan Allen did on behalf.
Yeah,
of
yeah, he did. He did. Did Andy speak at his funeral?
Probably.
Whose funeral was that Andy spoke at?
I was
couple
actually
years
just
ago.
reading something about.
Who?
He did so many.
Was it Ivan? I'm trying to remember.
I know he did Guazetta. I was reading something where he spoke at Guazetta's funeral.
Somebody's funeral I went to.
No, I was talking to Jimmy Williams. Jimmy Williams was talking about that.
I went to a funeral, and I thought it was Ivan Allen's.
Yeah.
And Andy
It's
spoke.
possible.
I don't know. I wouldn't go to a lot of funerals, but I think it was Ivan Allen's funeral that he just spoke and did an incredible job. Next question. Y'all get so quiet.
Well, I think I think we have a stopping place for now, but I think as things come back, we have so many good, colorful stories about different episodes.
Okay.
This has been a great pleasure.
Yes.
It really has.
Well, thank you all. This is a real pleasure for me. I was worried whether I was going to be able to give you the kind of information you really wanted.
And more.
Yeah. I think one of the things we felt when we talked to Azira is sort of clicked that nothing really does justice to the role that Jesse Hill played in this era. None of the current, descriptions of it. So I want you to think some more about that, some more examples, because I think it's an important piece of it. And I just don't, how frequently he was in the background of something. And no one, there's never been a book on him, right? Is there any?
Jesse Hill, and Andy will tell you, Jesse Hill was in everything. Jesse Hill was behind everything that had a successful tale on it where black people moved in this city. Jesse Hill was behind it. I just have to tell you, he was behind it. And that's why I know that I was very fortunate to have had the privilege of working with him, because I was embraced into so many things, had a chance to meet people that I never would have met, and was right in the middle of so many powerful meetings. Powerful. Let me tell you this one little thing. I'll never forget again. I was constantly being interrupted for my going out to lunch or going somewhere that he would say, no, I want you to go with me to this. I want you to go with me to that. And he said, a lot of times he just needed a ride. And he wanted me to drive and take him. But I went to this meeting with the, I'm getting memory loss again. What is this group that wears the hats and they have the big parade? And
Shriners?
The Shriners. Shriners had a big convention or something here in Atlanta, and that was back in the early 70s or late 70s. Maybe early 80s. But they invited Jesse Hill to come and speak. And as a child, I always looked at the Shriners as they were, to me, I looked at them like the Ku Klux Klan. They might not have been, but all I saw was big white men, red white men with these big hats, and when we were children, they would have big parades, and we were fearful about even going downtown when they had it, because the town would be loaded with white people, and you better not step on anybody's toes or brush against them. So I felt that they were like terrible. And I think they were racist, very much so. But at any rate, I think they decided to integrate, and they wanted to start with Jesse Hill. And many times Jesse Hill was the first for this, the first for that, all the time. And a lot of blacks were insulted by, we have more qualified people other than just Jesse Hill. But anyway, I didn't know where I was going, and he said, I want you to come go with me to this luncheon. So I went, and when we got there, we walked in. I think it was at the Hyatt Regency. We walked in the ballroom. It was just loaded with people, and of course, all whites. And I guess, a big, huge ballroom. It was over 1,000 people in there. And this was unbelievable. When he walked in, he and I walked in together, they said, oh, Jesse Hill. And it was well, you remember a little bit about him. So you know how people treated him, didn't you? Mm-hmm. They act like he was some royalty. Did they not?
Very special.
They were like, oh, Jesse Hill, Jesse Hill. So when we got to the door, oh, Mr. Hill, come right this way. Well, I was with him. So I'm standing back. I said, Mr. Hill, no, come on. So here I go, tagging along right with him. But I knew when we're going up to the podium, I don't have no business up there. I don't have nowhere to sit. So I'm still saying, I need to stand back. He said, come on with me. So we walked up to the podium. I'm feeling like an idiot. There's no seat for me. He said, get Miss Antoinin a seat. And they had to rearrange the podium. And I thought it was just horrible. I was just very embarrassed that these people and they all were these white men, Shriners. I'm the only lady up there. And he's moving seats and chairs and making a space for me. And we sat down, and I was saying, Lord, Mr. Hill, why? I didn't have to be up here. No, I want you to stick right with me, because we won't be here long. The place was packed, and I don't want to have to look for you. Next thing you know, he wrote a note to them to put me on next, because I got to go. I'm next, because I got to go. I don't have time to stay, I'm next. So we had not eaten any lunch. And people put plates and glasses all in front of us. So immediately after that person finished speaking, they recognized it. And they always made excuses that Jesse Hill is here, and he's in a hurry. He's a businessman that I know, and he has a previous appointment, so we're going to have him up first, and he came up to speak. Mr. Hill spoke, and I was scared to death. He chewed them up in confetti. He talked about their past record, the things that they stood for, the things that they've been supporting, how they have voted to abolish certain rules that was discriminatory, and how he went out, and he had, I'm telling you, he had no paper with him, and he remembered all of these things. I bet you he went down the line 10 or 12 things about them that was horrible, and they all were facing him with total embarrassment. And then, in other words, I can't remember verbatim what he said, but I know he made a long list, and he went down the list in his head. And as if to say, and you have the audacity to think that I want to be a part of this group. He chewed them out. And I'm telling you, they all sat there, and I could see them turning red. I'm sitting there at the podium. I'm looking out at the audience. And at first, they gave him a big, rousing applause when he came to the podium, like just applauding him, so happy to have him. And I think they thought that he was going to they were going to somehow acknowledge him as being a part of that organization. But he chewed them out some awful. And I had never been so scared. It just scared me to death. Because when we left, and after he finished, he didn't get not one hand of applause. He turned around and said, Miss Antoinin, and all that was on the mic, let's go. And they had stairs that go down in the center of the podium and stairs on the side because they were having some kind of awards thing that people were going to come up the center. He said, Miss Antoinin, let's go. Pulled my chair, came, left the podium, pulled my chair, said, let's go. And we walked down that center step and just walked out. Heads up in there. I said, Jesus, if you just let me out of this place. And it was not a discussion after that. I said, Mister, I don't talk about that. I don't talk about it. Do you think they got the point? I said, Mr. Hill, they had to get the point. So I'm through with it. I don't ever know what ever happened after that. But it was an experience it just sticks in my mind that this little short black man came in that room with at least 1,200 people, all white, and stood in there and told them how he felt. And I've never seen him that fired up. Because Mr. Hill was always kind of like the background person. And he'll speak in meetings and all, but not on a podium blasting people. I'd never seen that done. So I was utterly shocked. I thought, man, he's speaking at the shrine. I ain't want to speak with
And
them.
when do you think that was?
He was president of Atlanta Life, and we were in the new building, now that I think about it. So it had to be around 1980 or 81.
One of the stories my dad tells is, and you were talking about how Atlanta Life had given Clint Warner money for his house, but my dad talks about that Fred Bennett took him to see Jesse Hill and wanted Jesse Hill to call a meeting of the preachers because Jesse held the mortgage on their churches. So, I mean, what was the mechanism? How did Atlanta Life do mortgages? I mean, did they have a mortgage division, or what was the thing?
Atlanta Life mortgaged my house, this one too. There were many black people who couldn't get loans, who wouldn't qualify. I was a divorcee and divorced and didn't have money, a lot of money, and probably wouldn't qualify for FHA loan, conventional loan. And Atlanta Life afforded an opportunity for many, many black people who would not have qualified to purchase homes, to buy a home through them with a lower interest rate. And many black, like Friendship Church, our church was mortgaged by Atlanta Life. They would mortgage most of the black churches, and the interest was nothing like what you would have to get at First National Bank. They might charge 8.5% or 9%, 10%. Atlanta Life would do it for maybe half of that, 5%, or 4%. And they did that. That was just a natural. When Pascal's built not Herman Russell's, but when Pascal's built their hotel.
The one that was on Hunter Street.
One on Hunter Street. Atlanta Life sponsored that. I think Atlanta Life even sponsored Citizen Trust Bank when they built that building. So the Atlanta Life, as quiet as it may seem, did a lot for the community, and especially for Atlanta Life to have not be stronger than what it should be today. You know, but we have a tendency to, and it's a sad thing, but integration really hindered a lot of black businesses. And so I remember when they first integrated the hotels and we were able to go downtown and eat, a lot of black restaurants folded under. A lot of black jazz clubs. Atlanta was known for its jazz clubs.
The Carousel and Don
Carousel, Roy Peacock, all those places, they closed down because they could. All of a sudden, you could go downtown, and black people were excited about not necessarily integrating with white people, but having an opportunity to go to some of these places that they've been locked out of. Let me tell you something else. I'm going to talk about Atlanta Life a bit. You all might see some of the art that I have here in my house that I, because of Jesse Hill again, I had an opportunity of working with the Atlanta Life's National Afro-American Art Competition and Exhibition. Atlanta Life put together a National Black Art Competition. It was the first time in the history of African American artists ever have an opportunity to participate in a national art exhibit. Now that seemed far-fetched to think about it today when we have now National Black Arts Festival, and here at the High Museum they're honoring Ratcliffe Bailey. That was unheard of.
Right.
Ratcliffe Bailey was a part of our...
Well, it's still unheard of. I mean, this is the first.
Oh, this is the first one.
I mean, it's the first one that they organized for a black artist. This is 2011.
For black artists in Atlanta.
No.
Well, they've had black artists
No,
there.
but they didn't organize the exhibit
Oh, no.
themselves.
No.
They brought in, like the Bearden exhibit came from Washington. But for the High to actually organize
Exactly. You're right.
an exhibit featuring a solo show by black artists, I don't think it's ever been done.
It hasn't. No, I'm agreeing with you. In 1978, Atlanta Life did their groundbreaking, and they were getting ready to build a new building. But Jesse Hill came to me and said that we're going to have a national African American art competition, black artists, and I want you to coordinate it. Well, I'll be honest with you, I had never bought a piece of art other than I might go to Richardson and buy a painting. I had never bought any real art, and so I didn't know anything about putting together an art competition. And first thing I did was to contact black artists and art instructors and art patrons around the city, like Janelsa Holloway, who was head of the art department at Spelman, Lev Mills, who was also with the art department of Spelman, and then several people in the art departments across the country. And we put together an art advisory committee. I won't go into all this, take too long to tell you all of that. But anyway, we did a national art competition exhibition, and it was based on the fact that we had been contacted by white artists all over the country to do a sculpture on the outside of our building, and if we would commission them to do art and sculpture. And Jesse Hill said in his travel, he would run into people, he'd go to various meetings, and people would approach him about having some sculptures do art, or be commissioned to do sculpture in our building. And naturally, he came back and said, a black company, black building, all of our insurance patrons, policyholders are black. And he talking about a quest for economic dignity for black Americans. If we have any blacks in the sculptures, it's going to be about black sculpture. And he said, I never thought about any sculpture. I never thought about any art. But now that they've opened my mind to thinking about it, maybe it's something we need to look at. And then, as he began to talk to a lot of black artists, they said they had never participated in a national black art competition. They had many art competitions, but it was exclusive for white people. They locked the doors where black artists, they were locked out of them. So, of course, Lucille became very sensitive to that and said, we're going to have a national art competition that will open doors for all black artists across this country to participate in. I wasn't excited about it. I didn't have sense enough to know what that would bring to my life. And I had to kind of start coordinating it. And one thing I do know, when you don't know nothing about something, you better get some experts that do know something about it. So as I said, I began to contact gallery owners across the country, black people who own galleries, and black artists, and black art patrons like Otis Hammonds, and instructors who taught in various institutions across the country, who was head of art departments. And they helped us build an art advisory committee, which really helped us to put things in place and in focus. So that was to be So we put that together because in 1980 we were going to have the dedication of the building, which would have been our 75th anniversary. So with that, it took a lot to put that program together, an awful lot. We had judges like Samela Lewis and Richard Long and oh boy, if I could just remember, I can't remember people, and it's about to kill me. Oh God, some of the great artists. God, I can't think of his name. Anyway, we had fabulous judges, and each year we would get around 300 pieces of art. So Atlanta Life has now, no, not each year. Each year we get 100 pieces. We did that for 11 years. Some years we didn't honor that many because we wouldn't get 100. But we at Atlanta Life now you have about 600 pieces of art, and it's very fine African American art. And it would bring tears to your eyes to hear the artists talk to you about it. That's when I became very excited, as the black person that I am, and always thinking about justice for our people. And as I said before, I wasn't excited about it at first, but our first exhibit, I had people to call me and said, I'm so excited. I wasn't awarded a prize, but I'm just excited to be able to come to a national black art competition. I want my children to see what this is all about. I want my grandmama to come with me. And I was like, what? And I'm taking my vacation during that time. I'm saving my money so I can bring my family and my children so we could be a part of this. And I said to myself, wait a minute, this thing is serious. So the night of our first opening, our auditorium would only seat 300 people. But we had 500 or 600 people. We couldn't even get them in the auditorium. And then we said, wait a minute, we're going to do this right. We made it formal. It was black tie. The men wore the tuxedos, bow ties, and the ladies wore the formal conservative, not the wide, but mostly corporate formal dresses and all. And it was just a wonderful, if I thought about it, I would say this, I could have shown you all pictures of this, but wonderful exhibit. And people came from all over the country. And from that, we had it 11 years. That started the National Black Arts Festival. Because Michael Lomax and I had become friends then. And I invited him, since he was chairman of Fulton County Board of Commissioners, and he had the Fulton County Arts Council. I invited him to speak at our art program and bring greetings from Fulton County. So he was so carried away with Mr. Hill knew how to do things that would promote an event. He would ask all of the artists in the room, please stand. And whew, and you wouldn't know that many black artists exist. And half of the room would stand up. And he would say, the artists that participated who had interest into this competition, please remain standing. And then you see about 300 of them standing. And then he said, would you very quickly give me your name and the state you represent? And they represented the entire United States. They stood and said from New York, from Chicago, from California, this, that. And it was so exciting. And he said very quickly, Mr. Hill will say stuff fast. And it was just exciting to hear about 300 of them calling their names very quickly. And the state they represented, the city. And when they finished, the whole room went up and just gave him a fantastic applause. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, we truly have a national African American art competition across the United States. And they just gave him a great big hand. After that, Michael Lomax would always come to my office to talk to me, and we'd do an assessment because we was always very high then because the program was a massive success. And he said, oh, Henrietta, this is just so wonderful. It makes me want to cry. And he said, every time I come, and he had been coming every year, he said, I wish we could do something with with not just the visual arts, but with drama and music and everything. And I said, oh, that would be wonderful, but I knew we couldn't do that. We were just doing the visual arts. So then finally he said to me, I'm going to have a National Black Arts Festival. because of what he had seen that we had put together. And from there, he started the National Black Arts Festival. But the artists were, I cannot tell you how supportive they were. And I think that set the tone. Now, I remember in 1980, you didn't go in just about every black home and see black art. It was something you didn't do. So I started buying art in about 1978, and I just went crazy. I got art sitting downstairs on the walls, on the floor that I need to take down and put up. But I think that kind of opened doors for black people began to appreciate black art. And I remember a lady laughing at me, I don't like that old black art. And now you go to her house, that's all you see. So I think Atlanta Life should get a plus for that. They got to open the doors.
I never heard that. Cause
You didn't know that?
no, because you often wonder where Michael got the idea. Because it wasn't a really.
But you know what? He never gave us credit. He wouldn't give us credit, but I do. I do. I'd be damned if I'm gonna let him escape
we
that.
take
That
your
was all his
testimony.
idea. I do.
Testimony.
He came. He would sit in my office every night after one of the exhibits, and so he never said it. I went to many functions. I thought he would say, looking at the progress and looking at what Atlanta Life introduced, but he never said it. But that's all right. I've been saying it, and I'll say it loud, and he cannot say that I'm lying. So now it's written there. I even told some of the chairmen of the National Black Arts Festival that's where it came from. So now they printed in some of their brochures.
Have you ever talked to Neil, the new executive director? Yeah. We'll have to get that.
But that's
He needs to know
and
that.
they had their first reception.
history.
They had their first 2 or 3 press receptions at Atlanta
Atlanta
Life.
Life.
That's why we need this.
That's why we need what?
This recording.
Oh,
Yeah, no, this is important. This is really important because people don't, these, the role that these institutions play.
and Ratcliffe Bailey said to me the other day, I talk to him quite often, and he said, Henrietta, I thank you. You just don't know how much you all did. I said, well, we didn't do. He said, yes, you did. Y'all opened doors. And you got, for instance, Vicky Palmer and that other girl who put together this. He said, none of that would have happened. They have an appreciation of black art now because of what you all did. I got Ratcliffe Bailey to do the centennial art for Atlanta Life.
Right.
And I never forget when I approached, I had an art advisory committee for our centennial. And we were talking about having a centennial piece of art that would depict the history and life of Atlanta Life. And so they made recommendations for several artists. And I was fond of Ratcliffe, and I said, well, what about, I recommend Ratcliffe Bailey. So the committee laughed at me. They said, do you know how much money Ratcliffe gets for his work? He sells some pieces for $100,000. I said, you joking. So they said, well, he does get a lot for his money. And we only had, he told me not to tell this, so I can't tell you how much, but we only had X amount of dollars for. And so they said he wouldn't consider that. So I went over their head. I was the chairman anyway, so I said, I'm going to ask him anyway. So I called him, and he invited me to come to his house. And he has a very interesting, have you ever been there?
I've not had a chance
Very
to be
interesting house.
there. John Whalen built it for him.
He has his workshop. You can get 2 18-wheel trucks in there. So, it's huge. And his paintings, he took paintings the size of that whole wall over there. Entire wall, and taller, maybe 12 feet high. So, but anyway, I went to his house, and we sat and talked, and I told him what I wanted. And he said to me, Henrietta, I'd be honored to do that. He said, it's not about the money, it's historic. Atlanta Life would be 100 years old. Atlanta Life promoted art, promoted black causes. And he said, I couldn't look myself in the mirror and say no to you. So I was just having a fit. And I couldn't wait to get back and tell the committee that Radcliffe Bailey was confirmed that he was going to do it. But she did a great piece.
Yeah, he did.
Did a great piece. And he put my name up in it just a little bit. And I told him, you just got my name where I can't even hardly see it. I want to be seen. But he put names of various leaders in the company in the painting. And he did Mr. Hernan, founder of the barbershop. And you know the barbershop symbol, that little round thing that goes around. He had one of those, and the columns of Mr. Herndon's house, and a picture of Mr. Herndon. And then he just did a great piece and put names of major contributors of the company.
Yeah.
And I was honored that he put my name up in a little corner too with some of the other leaders.
He was the perfect person to do a piece for that.
Mm-hmm.
And before him, John Riddle. Remember John Riddle?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. And I love John Riddle. John Riddle was a person who spoke, because Chester Hill, as I said before, he had a vision that nobody was just ahead of all of us. And nobody in our company thought about any art, period. And especially having a national art competition, which was very, very expensive. We paid for artists to come here. We paid to have their work shipped. We paid to have it insured. We paid for judges, and we had great judges to come here and stay in the hotels. They came for the first screening, and then they would come back for the final review, and then we paid them for their work as an honorarium. So it was very, very expensive. Then we had to hire other people to be consultants to help us put the program together, and it was quite an expensive project. And we did that for 11 years. And so it was very, very expensive, and you just didn't see most. For instance, like Johnson Publishing Company purchased a lot of art, a lot of black art, and they were probably the only African American company that we knew anything about that had purchased a lot of black art. But the difference from our work, we purchased art from young aspiring artists who had not had gained name recognition. But now a lot of those artists are famous artists now. But what they did, they just went out and bought art. We had a competition, and the judges selected the work. And so that's how all of the work that we have was judged by these judges. So, and I feel really good when I buy a lot of art catalogs, and I read the artists, and they say,
you see the bio.
yeah, and they say,
Atlanta Life.
we're so proud that we were part of Atlanta Life's national art competition, that they won a prize in the art, so it always made me feel good.
Absolutely.
This has been fabulous.
So that means Henrietta, shut up.
No, we just need to let you get on with your day and promise to let us come back. If we
Y'all
stay.
really want to come back?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We will think of lots of things
Yeah.
to say, and she's raised a question that needs more thought, and so we will come back another day.